You think you know Nicole Watterson. You see the hard-working, slightly stressed, but ultimately loving mother from the amazing world of Gumball. She's the glue that holds the family together, the responsible adult in a world of pure chaos. That's the surface-level story. But what if I told you that's a lie? A carefully constructed facade hiding one of the most tragic and psychologically devastating character arcs in modern animation. Tonight, we're not just looking at a cartoon mom. We're conducting a deep dive forensic analysis into a life defined by relentless trauma, broken dreams, and a cycle of abuse she can never escape. This isn't a story about a happy family. This is the story of a woman's slow-motion breakdown, broadcast to us as a children's comedy. To understand the walking, talking manifestation of anxiety that is Nicole Watterson, you have to go back to the source, the origin. We get a glimpse into this horrifying backstory in the episode titled, fittingly, The Parents. When her estranged mother and father, Daniel and Mary Senecourt, reappear in her life, the curtain is pulled back, and what we see is a masterclass in psychological conditioning. Her parents didn't just have high expectations for her. That's the sanitized version. No, they engineered her. They programmed her from birth for a singular purpose: success at any and all costs. The episode plays it for laughs, showing them making her wear a business suit as an infant. But let's deconstruct what that actually means. There was no room for childhood, no room for play. Her identity was stripped away and replaced with a set of impossible metrics. Her name isn't just Nicole, her first name is Doctor. Think about that. They literally named her their expectation. This isn't parenting, it's a psychological experiment. When Nicole proudly brings home a report card filled with A+, her mother's reaction is to point out a non-existent F for gender, a joke that reveals a deeply unsettling truth. Even perfection was not enough. The goalposts were always moving. This is classic gaslighting. They created an environment where love was conditional, tied directly to achievement. She wasn't a daughter, she was an investment. Her parents complain about her own angry outbursts as a child, framing her as difficult. But what did they expect? They put a child under the pressure of a CEO and then act surprised when the pressure cooker explodes. She didn't have anger issues. She was a child reacting to an abusive, high-pressure environment where her own identity was constantly being invalidated. And the ultimate symbol of their disapproval? Richard. They didn't just dislike him. They saw him as the ultimate failure, the living embodiment of Nicole's decision to abandon their carefully laid plans for her. The fact that her mother, Mary, had another, more suitable suitor waiting outside the house 20 years later is pure, uncut, nightmare fuel. It shows that in all that time, they never saw her marriage as legitimate. They saw it as a mistake to be corrected. They weren't visiting their daughter. They were conducting a hostile takeover of her life, once again. The central conflict of the Watterson family, Nicole's rage versus her family's chaos, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It was forged in the crucible of her childhood, a direct result of parents who never taught her the meaning of unconditional love, only the crushing weight of unconditional expectation. This brings us to the single most important, most existentially terrifying episode in the entire series, the choices. Here, we see the moment that defined Nicole's entire life. Pushed to her breaking point by her family's usual brand of domestic chaos, time freezes, and she wonders how she ended up in this mess. She traces it all back to a single moment, the day she met Richard. The episode presents this as a whimsical journey through alternate timelines, but if you look closer, it's a horrifying exploration of a woman with no good options. It's a series of trolley problems where every track leads to a different kind of personal hell. Let's look at the first path, the one where she ignores Richard, avoids the detour and makes it to her karate tournament on time. On the surface, this is the good ending. She follows her parents' plan, she wins, she graduates at the top of her class. She becomes a CEO, then president, then a tyrannical overlord of a dystopian future. It's played as a joke, a slippery slope fallacy, but it's not. It's a diagnosis. This is what her parents' conditioning leads to. A relentless, pathological pursuit of success that is so all-consuming it destroys her empathy, her morality, and ultimately the world itself. This path shows us that the success her parents wanted for her was a poison chalice, turning her into the very thing she despises, a cold, controlling monster. She would have become her mother, but with global influence. So what about the other choices? The episode shows her contemplating a life with Banana Bob. It's presented as a goofy, absurd romance. But watch it again. It's a depiction of a slow descent into madness. She marries him, and his only form of communication, his only trait, is singing the word banana. At first it's funny, but the montage shows her sanity slowly fraying until she's a hollowed-out shell, institutionalized, driven insane by the sheer, mind-numbing repetition. This isn't a joke about a silly relationship. It's a chilling metaphor for being trapped in a marriage with someone who's emotionally unavailable, someone you can't connect with, until their defining trait becomes a form of psychological torture. Then there's the path with Harold, Tobias's father. This one is even darker. It's not subtext. It's just straight up a portrait of an emotionally abusive relationship. He uses negging and backhanded compliments to systematically dismantle her self-esteem. He criticises her constantly. We see a future Nicole who is a shell of her former self, with grotesque plastic surgery, desperately trying to contort herself into someone he might finally approve of. But he never does. It culminates in her burning down their mansion and getting arrested. This path is a raw, terrifying depiction of how a strong, capable woman can be ground down into nothing by a toxic partner, losing her identity in the process. Every other path is just as bleak. A life with Mr. Small, the hippie guidance counsellor, ends with her dying from his refusal to accept modern medicine. A life with Sal Left Thumb, the career criminal, ends in a quick, violent death during a moped accident. What the episode is screaming at us is that in the world of Elmore, for a young Nicole Watterson, every single path laid before her, other than Richard, led to tyranny, madness, abuse, or death. Let that sink in. Her choice to be with Richard wasn't a whimsical romance. It was an act of survival. He wasn't the best option. He was the only option that wasn't a guaranteed trip to the morgue or the asylum. And so she chooses him. She sacrifices her tournament. She sacrifices her parents' approval. She sacrifices her meticulously planned future, all for a moment of genuine, simple kindness from a goofy rabbit stuck in a log. The episode frames this as a beautiful love story, and in a way it is. We see the montage of their life together, moving into a dilapidated house, the joy of Gumball's birth, the adoption of Darwin, the arrival of Aeneas. But through the lens of her trauma, it's something else entirely. It's the story of a woman who escaped one prison only to build a new one. A prison of domesticity, of thankless work, of cleaning up endless messes. She chose love, yes, but in doing so she was forced to kill every ambition her parents had brutally programmed into her. And that internal conflict, that ghost of the hyper-competent woman she was supposed to be, haunts her every single day. It's the fuel for the rage monster we see in episodes like The Limit. Speaking of which, let's talk about The Limit. This episode isn't a funny exaggeration. It's a documentary. We see the Watterson kids relentlessly pestering Nicole for candy at the supermarket. She says no. They throw tantrums. Richard, the man-child she's tethered to, actively undermines her authority by siding with the kids. This isn't just a parent dealing with unruly children. This is a systematic breakdown of her authority and a complete lack of respect from her entire family. She is pushed and pushed, her boundaries violated again and again. Her simple request for a peaceful shopping trip is ignored. Her role as the sole provider and disciplinarian is rendered meaningless. And then it happens. She reaches her limit, but she doesn't just yell, she transforms. Her body contorts, her eyes glow, yellow, her teeth sharpen. She becomes a literal physical monster. The show plays this for slapstick horror as she chases her terrified family through the store. But what we are witnessing is a complete psychotic break. This is the visual representation of a person's psyche shattering under unbearable pressure. Years of sacrificing her dreams, of dealing with Richard's incompetence, of cleaning up after her children's chaos, of financial stress. It all culminates in this moment. The monster isn't a new entity. The monster is the real Nicole, the one that has been buried under layers of forced patience and domestic martyrdom. The most disturbing part of The Limit isn't the transformation itself, it's the resolution. After chasing them down, Nicole catches her reflection and sees the monster she's become. She breaks down, apologising for scaring them. And what does her family do? They apologise for pushing her too far. On the surface, it's a touching moment of reconciliation. But it's not. It's the classic cycle of abuse. They push her to the breaking point, she explodes in a way that terrifies them, feels guilty, and then they promise to be better, only for the cycle to repeat itself in the very next episode. They learned nothing. Nicole is trapped. She's the only adult in her own life, and the pressure to maintain that role is so immense that it physically and psychologically breaks her over and over again. This dynamic is reinforced in The Authority. The episode starts with Richard suffering a slapstick injury as usual, but at the hospital, Nicole's authority is immediately usurped by the arrival of Granny Jojo, Richard's mother. Jojo embodies an archaic, suffocating form of parenting based on fear and the elimination of all possible risks. She moves into the Watterson house and begins to implement her twisted philosophy. Gumball can't go outside because a car might hit him. Darwin can't use a knife because he might cut himself. Aeneas can't be near a window because windows. Jojo's lessons are so effective that she successfully traumatizes the entire family, turning them into fat, lazy and terrified versions of Richard. For Nicole, this is a waking nightmare. She comes home to find her intelligent, vibrant children have been lobotomized into parodies of her husband. Granny Jojo hasn't made them safer. She has crippled them, stripping them of their personalities and common sense. This is a direct attack on Nicole's entire life's work. She has fought tooth and nail to raise her kids to be independent, if chaotic, only for her mother-in-law to waltz in and undo it all in a matter of days. The episode reveals that Jojo's overprotective nature is the reason. Richard is the way he is. He was never allowed to learn from mistakes, never allowed to experience the world. He was smothered into incompetence. Nicole's subsequent battle with Granny Jojo isn't just a family squabble, it's an ideological war for the future of her children. When she finally breaks through their fear-induced stupor, and they have to stop the out-of-control car on the highway, it's a powerful metaphor. Nicole is literally teaching her family how to use their brains again, how to apply common sense and take control of their own lives after Jojo's influence had stripped it all away. She wins, but the episode serves as a chilling reminder of how easily her family can regress, and how she is the only one standing between them and a life of pure, unadulterated uselessness. It's another weight on her already overburdened shoulders. Nicole's trauma doesn't just manifest as rage, it also manifests as a desperate, overbearing need to control her children's lives, a trait she undoubtedly inherited from her own parents. In The Meddler, this compulsion is put under a microscope. Feeling guilty for being a working mom, she decides to spend a week at school with Gumball and Darwin, inserting herself into every aspect of their lives. This isn't a sweet gesture, it's a psychological invasion. She's in Gumball's locker, she's helping him in the shower room, she's burping him like an infant at lunch. She's trying to reclaim the childhood moments she missed, but in doing so, she's humiliating him and stripping him of his autonomy. When Gumball is being bullied by Tina, Nicole doesn't teach him to stand up for himself. She feeds him psychoanalytical lines to repeat, fighting his battles for him. Then, in a moment of pure cringe, she tries to set him up with Penny, loudly announcing his crush to the entire cafeteria. Gumball, mortified, panics and tells Penny he never liked her, breaking the poor girl's heart. Nicole's meddling, her attempt to help, directly causes her son social and emotional pain. She's so blinded by her own need to be a good mother that she can't see the damage she's causing. She's repeating the cycle of her own parents, controlling, micromanaging, and ultimately making her child's life harder in the name of love. The episode climaxes with Gumball deciding to try out for the cheerleading squad to win Penny back, a plan so absurd it could only come from him. But what does he ask for? He asks for Nicole's emotional support. He needs his mum. And in that moment, she finally understands. She stops meddling and just becomes a supportive parent. The irony is crushing. To finally connect with her son, she has to support him in a moment of pure, unfiltered Gumball-esque stupidity. The very thing that causes her so much stress is also the only thing that truly bonds them. It's a bittersweet victory that perfectly encapsulates the paradox of her existence. Let's not forget the financial strain, another constant source of trauma for Nicole. In the money, the family's credit card is declined. They are broke. Richard reveals he converted their life savings into gold and then, in an act of staggering stupidity, threw it into the ocean because he thought offshore bank account was a literal instruction. This isn't just a funny mistake. This is an act of catastrophic financial negligence that single-handedly ruins his family. Nicole's reaction is predictably to transform into a rage monster, but she's calmed by Richard's irresistible charm. Think about what this means. She's so conditioned to forgive his incompetence that she can't even hold him accountable for vaporizing their entire net worth. The family is forced to sell out and star in a cheesy commercial for Joyful Burger. Gumball initially resists, preaching about dignity and pride. But dignity doesn't put food on the table. The episode's most iconic and disturbing sequence sees the family's animation quality degrade as their financial situation worsens. They lose their colour, their fluid motion, their 3D backgrounds. They are literally being erased by poverty. This is a brilliant, terrifying metaphor for how financial hardship strips people of their vitality and identity. Nicole, the only one with a job, is powerless to stop it. She is the sole breadwinner, and yet she's brought down by the foolishness of the man she chose to marry. It's another layer to her inescapable tragedy. The daily grind of being the only functioning adult is a recurring nightmare. In The Responsible, Richard and Nicole are going to a parent-teacher meeting, and Richard hires a babysitter he found online whose ad was for literally sitting on babies. Disgusted, Nicole is forced to leave Gumball and Darwin in charge. Anais knows this is a disaster, but Nicole, out of options, has to trust them. What follows is a predictable cascade of chaos. Gumball and Darwin, in their attempt to be responsible, nearly destroy the house, set it on fire, and then try to put Anais in a diaper. Their incompetence is a direct reflection of their father's. The climax sees the house completely flooded. Nicole returns home, expecting the worst. And when she opens the door, a tidal wave erupts, washing her and Richard onto the lawn. She's justifiably furious, but the episode ends with the entire family collectively deciding to blame the internet for their problems. It's played as a joke, but it's a symptom of a deeper sickness in the family, a complete refusal to take accountability. Nicole is the only one who ever faces consequences, and when she finally has a moment to instill a lesson, the family defaults to a nonsensical scapegoat. So, not only does she have to clean up the physical mess, but she has to live with the knowledge that her family is incapable of learning. The universe itself seems to conspire against her. In The Job, Richard gets a job as a pizza delivery guy. For any other family, this would be great news. For the Wattersons, it's a world-ending catastrophe. Richard's employment is presented as an anomaly so great that it literally breaks the fabric of reality. His driving distorts physics, time, and space. Night falls in the middle of the day. Snow appears in summer. People start floating. Anais explains that Richard working upsets the natural balance of the universe, a balance where he is lazy and Nicole is the provider. Think about the psychological weight of that. The universe has decreed that Nicole Watterson must be the sole sufferer, the only one shouldering the burden. Her one chance at having a partner who contributes to the household is met with apocalyptic consequences. To save the world, she has to force her husband to get fired. She has to actively ensure he remains a financial drain on their family. She is trapped by a cosmic order that demands her perpetual struggle. She can't win. She can't even break even. Her fate is to work, to suffer, and to clean up the messes of a family and a universe that depends on her misery to function. Let's descend deeper. The episode The Fury exposes the ghost of a past friendship, one that was shattered by the same competitive drive her parents instilled in her. We learn that Nicole and Yuki, Masami's mother, were once childhood best friends and martial arts prodigies. They were equals until a tournament forced them to fight each other. Nicole, channeling her fury, that same rage we see bubble up in her adult life, wins the fight but loses her friend. Yuki leaves in shame, and Nicole quits martial arts, haunted by the experience. When Yuki returns for revenge, Nicole refuses to fight. It's not out of fear. It's out of a deep-seated trauma. The last time she unleashed her full power, she destroyed the most important relationship of her youth. She's terrified of that part of herself, the part her parents cultivated. The episode portrays their final battle in a dramatic, anime-inspired style. But beneath the visual flair is a painful confrontation with her past. She is literally fighting the ghost of her own ambition. Even when they reconcile, the scars are there. It's a reminder that before she was a Watterson, before she was a wife and mother, she was a prodigy whose potential was so great it became destructive. Another part of her identity she had to sacrifice, and we see this sacrifice over and over. In the DVD, Gumball and Darwin destroy a rented movie. A simple, childish mistake. But instead of confessing, they spiral into a series of increasingly idiotic schemes to avoid the consequences. They try to make a fake DVD, beg for money, even get jobs as cosmetic test subjects. All the while, the late fees are piling up. When Nicole finally gets home, she doesn't find a note of apology. She finds a mountain of late fee notices. The final bill is a staggering $700. For a family constantly on the brink of financial collapse, this is a disaster. And who has to pay for it? Nicole. The episode ends with the family running from Larry to avoid paying the fee. It's a funny visual gag, but it's another paper cut on Nicole's psyche. Her sons created a problem, refused to take responsibility, and she is the one left to literally and figuratively pay the price. Every single day for her is a variation of this story. Someone in her family creates a mess, be it physical, financial, or reality bending, and she is the one who has to fix it. It's an endless, thankless loop. Even when she tries to have a moment of personal triumph, it's tainted. In the deal, she's named Employee of the Month. It's a small victory, but for a woman who gave up a future of immense success, it's a vital piece of validation. She's so proud she calls everyone in the phone book to brag. But Richard feels left out. He feels underappreciated because his work as a house husband isn't acknowledged. The kids, in a misguided attempt to help, convince him to go on strike. The result? The house descends into a post-apocalyptic hellscape ruled by feral, monstrous versions of her children. The house is on fire, the walls are covered in demonic scribbles, and her children have become literal monsters who threaten to eat the police. This is what happens when Nicole isn't there to maintain order for a single day. Her reward for one moment of professional achievement is to come home to a scene from a horror film. To restore order, She has to concede to Richard's bizarre and nonsensical parenting methods. She has to admit that his brand of chaotic inaction is somehow effective. She has to validate his role, even though his strike almost got them all killed. Even in her moment of triumph, she's reminded that she is utterly and hopelessly indispensable. The family cannot survive without her, and that knowledge is its own special kind of prison. The show constantly puts Nicole in impossible situations. In the car, a series of accidents involving the Robinsons' new car escalates into an all-out war between the two families. It starts with Gumball and Darwin accidentally destroying it, then Richard making it worse, then Nicole revealing she also dented it earlier. It's a comedy of errors where everyone is a little bit at fault. But who is expected to be the diplomat? Who has to apologise and smooth things over? Nicole. She is forced to confront the enraged Robinsons, who are in the middle of violently destroying her family's car in retaliation. The situation only de-escalates when the donut cop tasers the Robinsons into submission. It's another day, another conflict she has to manage, another fire she has to put out. The psychological toll is immense. In the password, we see a rare crack in her composed exterior devolve into a petty competition with Richard over who is the favourite parent. After Gumball and Darwin manipulate Richard into feeling like the second favourite, Nicole sees an opportunity. She tries to buy their affection with a new computer. This sparks a ridiculous high-speed car chase on the freeway, with both parents recklessly endangering their children just to win a meaningless argument. For a moment, Nicole abandons her role as the responsible one and gives in to the same childish pettiness that defines the rest of her family. It's a brief, ugly glimpse of what can happen when her composure finally slips, a sign that the constant pressure is eroding her very character. Even something as simple as a holiday becomes a source of dread. In The Lie, Gumball invents a new holiday, Sluzzletag, to cure the January blues. The whole town, desperate for a reason to celebrate, latches onto it. Everyone except Miss Simeon believes it's real. Nicole, against her better judgment, is swept up in the town's collective delusion. She watches her family embrace the fake traditions with a weary resignation. She knows it's a lie, but she's too tired to fight it. She has to play along, hosting a dinner of sluzzlewursts and pretending a magical being is going to emerge from her toilet. For her, it's just another elaborate, exhausting performance she has to put on for the sake of her family's happiness. Then there's the procrastinators. Nicole asks Gumball and Darwin to do one simple chore: take out the trash. She has to leave for work, so she warns them she'll be back at 5 p.m, even adopting a mominator persona to emphasise her seriousness. This persona isn't just a joke, it's a defence mechanism. It's the armour she has to put on to be taken seriously by her own children. The rest of the episode details the boys' epic quest to do literally anything but take out the trash. They waste hours on the internet, play with their food, and conduct bizarre experiments. By the time Nicole gets home, they've forgotten the trash and accidentally thrown away the groceries instead. The episode ends with the family eating literal garbage for dinner. It's a perfect microcosm of Nicole's entire existence. She works hard all day, comes home, and is rewarded with failure, incompetence, and a meal made of trash. And she just has to accept it. In The Shell, we see her maternal instincts clash with her son's burgeoning love life. After Gumball accidentally cracks Penny's shell, he's forbidden from seeing her by her overprotective father, Patrick. Nicole isn't a major player in this episode, but her absence is telling. Her son is going through his first major romantic crisis, a pivotal moment of emotional development, and she's at work. She can't be there for him. When she finally does show up at the climax, it's only because Patrick's reckless driving leads the pest controller to accidentally tranquilise her. She's brought into the drama not as a participant, but as collateral damage. She's a passive victim in her own son's story, a footnote in his grand romantic gesture. This feeling of being an outsider in her own family's narrative is a subtle but constant theme. The family's adventures are driven by the chaos of Gumball, Darwin, and Richard. Nicole's role is almost always reactive. She is the janitor, the banker, the disciplinarian, the chauffeur. She is the infrastructure that allows their zany lives to happen, but she rarely gets to be the hero of her own story. Her dreams, as we saw in The Choices, were vast and ambitious. Her reality is small and confining, and every episode is another brick in the wall of that prison. Let's analyse the episode The Painting. The inciting incident is a drawing by Aeneas, which Principal Brown interprets as a cry for help depicting a dysfunctional family. His solution is a role reversal. Richard must get a job, and Nicole must stay home and relax. For Nicole, this should be a vacation, but it's torture. She's a woman who has been programmed for action, for work, for productivity. The concept of relaxing is so alien to her that she can't do it. She cleans the already spotless house, then starts making messes just so she has something to clean. This isn't just a funny gag about a neat freak. This is a portrait of a woman whose identity is so completely tied to her labour that she cannot function without it. She's forgotten how to simply be. Meanwhile, Richard's attempt at getting a job is a predictable disaster. He can't even get through the automatic doors of the office building. When he finally does, he's fired before he's even hired. The universe realigns itself. Richard returns to his rightful place on the couch, and Nicole returns to her role as the overworked provider. When the family reunites, they've all learned the wrong lesson. They decide everything is better the way it was. Aeneas reveals the true meaning of her painting, that despite their flaws, she loves her family. It's a sweet moment, but it solidifies Nicole's fate. Her family's happiness is contingent on their dysfunction, and that dysfunction is contingent on her suffering. She is the sacrificial lamb on the altar of their domestic bliss. The episode The Ape offers another look at Nicole's painful history, this time with her old teacher Miss Simeon. We learn that Miss Simeon has been her antagonist since childhood, a relentless source of torment and unfair criticism. When Miss Simeon, depressed over being unliked by her students, tricks Gumball into writing her a favourite teacher nomination, Nicole's protective instincts flare up. It's not just about her son being manipulated, it's personal. Miss Simeon represents another authority figure from her past, who always saw her as a loser. The ensuing car chase is an explosion of repressed rage. Nicole isn't just trying to get a piece of paper back, she's trying to reclaim her dignity from a lifelong bully. She becomes utterly unhinged, engaging in a dangerous high-speed pursuit, all while her family is in the car. It's another moment where her intense emotions put her family in jeopardy. She's so focused on righting a past wrong that she loses sight of her present responsibility. Even though she ultimately wins by preventing Miss Simeon from getting the award through deceit, it's a hollow victory. It's another conflict born from her traumatic past, another instance where she has to become a monster to feel like she's in control. Every minor inconvenience becomes a major psychological battle. In The Remote, a simple family argument over what to watch on TV escalates into a domestic war. Nicole, Gumball, Darwin and Richard are all vying for control. The conflict spirals out of the house and into the mall parking garage, where Nicole engages in a physical stunt-filled battle with her own family over a garage door opener they mistake for a TV remote. She performs an incredible jump between buildings, a feat of athleticism that hints at the powerful, capable woman she could have been. But what is she using this power for? To fight her husband and children over a trivial object? It's a pathetic, tragic waste of her potential, a perfect metaphor for her entire life. The ultimate betrayal in this episode comes from Aeneas. The quiet, intelligent daughter orchestrates the entire conflict from the shadows, manipulating everyone to ensure she gets to watch her show. When Nicole realises she's been played by her own 4-year-old daughter, her face is a mixture of pride and pure terror. She has raised a child who is just as manipulative and cunning as her own parents were. The cycle is beginning anew. Her own home is not a sanctuary. It's a battlefield, and she's surrounded by enemies who wear the faces of the people she loves most. And then we have The Worst, an episode that explicitly asks the question, who has it the hardest? The entire family is angry about their lot in life. Gumball and Darwin complain about the pressures of masculinity. Anais complains about the condescension she faces as a child. Richard complains about the burden of avoiding responsibility. But Nicole's complaint cuts the deepest. She details the systemic sexism she faces at work, from being passed over for promotions in favour of a literal office plant, to being told to smile more. Her struggles are not just personal, they are societal. The family decides to swap lives for a day to see who's right. Nicole becomes a man, and her day is a breeze. She jogs through the park, terrifying people with her newfound masculine energy, and works in construction where her aggressive nature is seen as an asset. Meanwhile, Gumball and Darwin, living as women, are immediately objectified and underestimated, crushed by the literal glass ceiling. Anais, as an adult, is crushed by the soul-crushing monotony of office work and a middle-aged metabolism. Richard, as a kid, is overwhelmed by school. The experiment proves Nicole's point unequivocally. Her daily struggle is objectively the most difficult. But does it change anything? No. The episode ends with her launching into another tirade, only to be ironically cut off by the credits. Her voice, even when she's proven right, is silenced. The trauma is relentless, and it comes from every direction. In The Poltergeist, Richard becomes convinced the house is haunted. The ghost, however, turns out to be a depressed Mr. Robinson, whom Gumball and Darwin are hiding in the attic. The episode revolves around the boy's misguided attempts to cheer him up. Where is Nicole during all of this? She's the victim of Richard's ghost-hunting traps. She's hung upside down, caught in nets, and completely ignored. While her family is focused on the emotional well-being of their grumpy neighbour, Nicole is literally trapped and suffering. Her own distress is treated as background noise to the main plot. She is, once again, a secondary character in the chaos unfolding in her own home. This pattern of neglect is a constant. In The Helmet, the family becomes obsessed with the tinfoil hat they believe is lucky. Richard and Nicole fight over it, needing its luck for a game show and a job interview respectively. The fight escalates until the entire family is at each other's throats. Anais has to scream sense into them. This hat, this symbol of unearned success, brings out the worst in them, reigniting Nicole's desperate ambition and Richard's selfish desires. It's a reminder of the life of achievement Nicole gave up, and it turns her into a person she doesn't want to be, willing to sabotage her husband for a shot at a promotion. The hat is just a catalyst. The underlying desperation and dysfunction were there all along. In The Fight, Gumball is being bullied by Tina. Anais and Richard offer terrible advice. It's only when Nicole gets home and learns what's happening that real action is taken. And her method is not to talk to the principal or the parents. Her method is to drive directly to the junkyard and confront Tina's gigantic, terrifying father, Mr. Rex. She doesn't hesitate. She marches into a literal dinosaur's lair to defend her son. The ensuing fight happens off-screen, but we see the result. The entire Rex family home collapses. Nicole emerges, calmly stating they've come to an agreement. This is Nicole in her purest form, a force of nature willing to go to war for her family. It's heroic, but it's also deeply sad. Why is she the only one capable of this? Why is the burden of protection always on her? Because as we've seen time and time again, everyone else in her life is utterly useless. We see the origins of her family's dependence in the Goons. Anais, bored with her own intelligence, wants to learn how to be dumb like her father and brothers. They proceed to teach her their ways, which mostly involve acting on pure, thoughtless impulse. Anais proves to be a natural, and soon she has supplanted Gumball as Richard's favourite playmate. Gumball, feeling left out, is driven to the brink of sanity, even resorting to playing puzzles with Nicole. This episode, played for laughs, is a terrifying look at the infectious nature of the Watterson brand of idiocy. Nicole is fighting a losing battle. The very intelligence that she hopes will be Aeneas's ticket out of a life like hers is something Aeneas is willing to throw away just to fit in with the rest of the family. Nicole is watching her daughter actively choose the path of mediocrity that she herself fought so hard to escape. Even when trying to do good, her family's incompetence leads to disaster. In The Gift, Gumball and Darwin kidnap Masami to teach her a lesson about appreciating her birthday. A felony. They lock her in the basement, which then catches fire and then floods. The situation is a complete catastrophe born from their misguided intentions. While all this is happening, where is Nicole? At the hospital, because Anais has contracted frog flu from kissing frogs in a desperate attempt to find a fairy tale prince. Every member of her family is a walking disaster zone. Her life is a constant, frantic race from one self-inflicted crisis to another, with no breaks, no support, and no end in sight. The series presents Nicole Watterson as a comedic character, an exaggerated stereotype of the overworked mom. But when you strip away the laugh track and look at the literal events of her life, a much darker picture emerges. She's a woman of immense potential, a genius and a martial arts prodigy, who was psychologically broken by her abusive parents. She escaped them by choosing the only path that didn't lead to death or institutionalization. A life with Richard, a man whose defining characteristic is his utter incompetence. This choice forced her to sacrifice every ambition she ever had, trading a future of success for a present of thankless, mind-numbing domestic labour. She is trapped in a cycle of chaos perpetuated by her family, whose love for her is inextricable from their complete and utter dependence on her. The pressure of being the sole provider, protector, and responsible adult in a world that seems cosmically aligned against her causes her to periodically snap, transforming into a literal monster, a manifestation of the rage and resentment simmering just beneath the surface. Her life is not a comedy. It's a Greek tragedy playing out in a brightly coloured suburban purgatory. She is Sisyphus, forever pushing the boulder of her family's dysfunction up a hill, only to watch it roll back down, day after day, for the rest of her life. And the most traumatic part of all? She knows it, and she chose it. In The Founder, we get another perfect example of how Richard's mere existence is a catalyst for chaos that Nicole inevitably has to resolve. While she's inside Chanax Inc. attempting to do a simple, responsible task, paying a bill in person because their internet is cut off, Richard is left in the car. This should be a safe, contained situation, but it's not. Richard, driven by a desire for snacks, wanders into the building and is immediately mistaken for the company's long-lost reclusive founder. Instead of correcting this misunderstanding, he leans into it. He assumes total control of a multi-million-dollar corporation. His leadership is a masterclass in absurdity. He replaces office infrastructure with fun alternatives, like an elevator that's just a bouncy castle, and a helicopter that's just an ice cream truck. He ignores all employee complaints and orders the building's entire structural foundation to be destroyed for a redesign. He is actively, joyously running a massive company into the ground. All the while, Nicole is trapped in a bureaucratic labyrinth, being sent on a wild goose chase from floor to floor, just trying to pay a simple bill. The juxtaposition is stark and horrifying. She's struggling within the system, while her husband is effortlessly destroying it from the top down. When she finally reaches the top and confronts him, the consequences of his actions come crashing down, literally. The entire Canax building collapses into rubble. They escape in the helicopter ice cream truck, which plummets to the ground. Miraculously, they survive. And after all that, after her husband has impersonated a CEO and destroyed a skyscraper, Nicole's first thought is to ask the goblin assistant if she still needs to pay her bill. Even in the face of complete surreal disaster, her mind is locked on her responsibilities. She's so conditioned to be the one to solve problems that she can't even process the absurdity of the situation. It's just another mess she has to deal with. Let's look at the sheer scale of the chaos she endures. In the nuisance, the family discovers that the mayor of Elmore is trying to banish them from the city, not because they are bad people, but because their very presence is a chaotic force that lowers property values and scares away rich investors. They are officially declared a public nuisance. To fight this, they decide to become model citizens, but their attempts are twisted and bizarre, only making things worse. When that fails, they embrace their nature and decide to sabotage the mayor's plan by making Elmore as undesirable as possible. What follows is an orchestrated campaign of destruction. Gumball and Darwin unleash termites. Richard plants radioactive waste. Aeneas stages a fake murder scene. And Nicole, she creates a trail of oil and lights it on fire, causing a chain reaction of explosions that destroys multiple houses. She doesn't just participate, she excels. This is a woman who, when pushed, is capable of orchestrating acts of domestic terrorism to protect her family's right to stay in their home. The episode ends with the citizens of Elmore, the very people they were trying to save their city for, pelting them with rotten tomatoes. Even when they win, they lose. Nicole has to be the villain to protect her family, and she receives no thanks for it, only scorn. The constant pressure on her to be perfect, to be the best, is a theme that never lets up. In The Mothers, a simple Mother's Day card from Gumball and Darwin sparks a competition with Tobias and Banana Joe to determine who has the superest mother in the world. Nicole is unwittingly entered into a series of bizarre challenges designed by the kids. She's forced to run up a down escalator at high speed, endure ridiculous tests of strength, and participate in a hot sauce eating contest. She's being judged and ranked against other mothers, a twisted reflection of the performance anxiety her own parents instilled in her. The situation turns dire when Gumball and Darwin, trying to show their appreciation, hang a giant banner from a parking garage that reads, "We're sorry." They fall and end up dangling precariously, facing certain death. In this moment, Nicole's true nature is revealed. She hears Gumball's cry for help from across town. The show depicts her literally transforming into a superhero, complete with a cape, as she rushes to their rescue. She scales the building, swings on a fire hose, and saves her sons in a spectacular fashion. It's a triumphant moment, but it's born from a place of deep trauma. Her love for her family is so powerful it manifests as a literal superpower, but it only ever activates in moments of life-threatening crisis created by their own foolishness. She is their saviour, but she is also their enabler, forever bound to rescue them from the consequences of their actions. In The Possession, Nicole's sanity is once again tested by the dual forces of Richard's incompetence and Granny Jojo's insidious influence. Richard has developed a deep emotional attachment to their old broken refrigerator. He refuses to get rid of it, reminiscing about his entire life in relation to this inanimate object. Nicole wants it gone, but Granny Jojo insists on getting it repaired under an old warranty. This simple disagreement about an appliance becomes a battleground for Nicole and her mother-in-law. They are forced to go on a road trip together, bickering the entire way. Meanwhile, Richard's attachment to the fridge is revealed to be more sinister. The fridge is a dimensional storage for emotions, and it literally swallows him, trapping him in a frozen wasteland of his own happy memories. To save him, Nicole and Jojo must put aside their differences and venture into the demonic appliance together. Inside, they find Richard blissfully content, refusing to leave his nostalgia-fueled prison. They have to convince him that he can hold on to his memories without being literally consumed by them. They succeed, but think about what just happened. Nicole had to physically enter a metaphysical prison inside a broken kitchen appliance to save her husband from his own emotional immaturity. This is not a normal Tuesday. This is a level of domestic chaos that would break a lesser person. For Nicole, it's just another day. The tragic irony is that Nicole is acutely aware of her situation. In the web, she becomes terrified of the dangers of the internet after reading a parenting magazine. Her attempts to child-proof their computer are absurd and literal. She installs a firewall by setting the yard on fire. Gumball and Darwin, frustrated by her technological illiteracy, decide to teach her. They discover her computer is a horrifying mess of pop-up ads, misused social media posts, and a fundamental misunderstanding of how anything works. They are disturbed by her incompetence, but then they go to her workplace, the Rainbow Factory, and discover that all the adults are just as inept. They can't type, they don't understand email, they print out videos frame by frame. It's a moment of horrifying realization for Gumball and Darwin. The people in charge of the world, the adults, have no idea what they're doing. The boys conclude that the future is doomed, and that technology will be destroyed by the very people who are supposed to be its stewards. In this moment, Nicole isn't just a single incompetent adult. She's a representative of an entire generation's failure to adapt. The burden of the future rests on the shoulders of her children, not because she's a bad person, but because the world she lives in is fundamentally broken. Even her own body betrays her. In the diet, Richard decides to go on a diet, but his complete lack of self-control means he only gets fatter. Gumball and Darwin, in an effort to help, lock him in the shed. When that fails, they try motivating him with exercise, which backfires spectacularly. Richard becomes a grotesquely buff, narcissistic gym bro. He abandons all his responsibilities to pursue a life of flexing and taking aggressive selfies. His new personality is just as destructive as his old one, just in a different way. He causes a fire, obstructs firefighters, and is a general menace to society. Nicole isn't present for most of this episode, but her absence speaks volumes. Her husband undergoes a complete physical and psychological transformation from one extreme to another, and she's not there to see it. She's at work, earning the money that allows him the freedom to have these kinds of existential crises. The episode ends with Richard returning to his old self after realizing how much he misses food. The status quo is restored. Richard is lazy, and Nicole is the provider. The brief, horrifying experiment with a motivated Richard proves that any deviation from their established dysfunction only leads to more chaos. She's locked into her role not just by choice, but by the fundamental nature of her family. The sheer emotional labour she performs is staggering. In the heist, Richard accidentally robs a bank because he mistakes it for a Joyful Burger drive-thru. He comes home with $2 million in cash. A normal person would panic. Aeneas panics. But Nicole's first reaction is a cold, calculated fury. When Aeneas insists they have to return the money, Nicole has a brief, terrifying fantasy of just taking the money and moving to Martinique. For a split second, we see her almost choose a life of freedom, a life without this burden. But she can't. Her conscience, her role as the moral centre of the family, forces her back to reality. The rest of the episode is a reverse heist, with the family trying desperately to sneak the money back into the bank. Their plans are, as always, convoluted and insane. Nicole's plan involves hiding in a box. Gumball's involves stuffing cash into an ATM. Richard's involves burying the money and then tunnelling out of prison after 20 years. They're all idiots. The only one with a sensible plan is Darwin, who just walks into the bank and drops the money off while everyone else is arguing. The family is saved not by intelligence or skill, but by the simple, direct action that everyone else overlooked. But the victory is short-lived. The police mistake the returned money for a bomb and blow it all up. All that effort, all that moral turmoil for Nicole, and it ends in literal ashes. It's the ultimate punchline to the cruel joke that is her life. In The Agent, we see the aftermath of Nicole's influence, albeit indirectly. Gumball and Darwin, forced to wear shrunken clothes from the lost and found, adopt the personas of secret agents. Their horseplay leads to them being tasked by Principal Brown to find a toilet paper thief. This entire adventure, this dive into a world of make-believe espionage, is a coping mechanism. It's how they process the world. And where did they learn this? From their family. Their entire life is a series of absurd scenarios, so it's only natural that they would frame a simple mystery as a spy thriller. Nicole isn't in the episode, but her presence is felt. Her constant struggle to impose order on a chaotic world has created children who can only interpret reality through the lens of fiction. Let's consider The Pizza, an episode that perfectly demonstrates how the Wattersons' dysfunction is a plague upon the entire town of Elmore. The family, all in a bad mood, decide to order a pizza. But their individual frustrations with Larry, the multi-job holding everyman of Elmore, all come to a head. Nicole is angry about a car repair bill. Richard is angry about being denied service at a burger joint. The kids are angry about him shushing them at the video store. They are all taking their bad day out on this one single overworked individual. Richard's complicated pizza order is the final straw. Larry snaps. He quits all of his jobs, and without Larry, the entire town of Elmore collapses into anarchy in under 20 minutes. The streets are on fire, citizens have devolved into Mad Max-style tribes, and society has completely broken down. The Wattersons, emerging from their home, are shocked. They finally realise that their selfish actions have consequences that affect everyone. To fix this, Nicole has to lead her family through an apocalyptic wasteland, fighting off deranged citizens to find Larry and apologise. She single-handedly takes down an entire gang of their former friends and neighbours. She's a warrior, a leader, a force of nature. But she's forced into this role only because her family's collective lack of empathy almost destroyed the world. It's her greatest moments of strength, born from her family's greatest moments of weakness. We see her struggle with the very concept of self-worth in the signature. A convoluted plot involving adoption papers leads to a chaotic power struggle within the family. It culminates in the revelation that Frankie, Richard's deadbeat father, has tricked them into signing away their house. The family is in shock, completely defeated. But who finds the loophole? Who finds the solution? Anais points it out, but it's Nicole who takes action. She rallies the family, gets them to City Hall, and navigates a maze of red tape to ensure Louis and Jojo get married, making Louis the most powerful member of the family and nullifying Frankie's claim to the house. Even in a plot that barely involves her, Nicole is the engine of the resolution. While Richard is dealing with his daddy issues and Gumball and Darwin are caught in the crossfire, she is the one who is thinking strategically. She is the one who understands how to work the system, how to fight back. But her reward for saving their home is just returning to the status quo. There's no parade, no special thanks. She just puts out another fire and goes back to her life of quiet desperation, waiting for the next one to ignite. And finally, we must address the finale. This episode is a meta-commentary on the entire series, where the consequences of the Wattersons' actions finally catch up to them all at once. They're presented with a bill for all the damage they've caused to the town of Elmore, $800,000. Gumball and Darwin are told they have to restart school from kindergarten. Richard is facing prison time. They're about to lose their house. It is the end of the line. The accumulated karmic debt of the entire series has come to collect. Nicole and Anais try to solve the problem diplomatically, pleading their case at the Justice Department. But the files on their family's misdemeanours are mountainous. Gumball, Darwin, and Richard, meanwhile, try to solve the problem their way, with more chaos. They hijack a bus, run a scam, and get chased by the police. Their solution to having caused too much destruction is to cause even more destruction. It's a feedback loop of idiocy. Eventually the entire family is thrown in a prison cell. In a moment of desperation, Anais tells them the only way out is to make things worse. So they do. They antagonise everyone they've ever wronged. Gumball and Darwin get Mr. Small mailed to the smallest country in the world. Nicole insults Hector's mother until he goes on a destructive rampage. Richard unleashes Kenneth, the monstrous, creature they created in the microwave. The entire town of Elmore becomes a war zone, with giant monsters battling in the streets. The episode ends with the entire town forming an angry mob, breaking into the Watterson house and attacking the family. As they are being beaten, Gumball wishes for some kind of magic device to reset reality. The credits roll. The show ends on a cliffhanger. But for Nicole, this isn't a cliffhanger. It's the logical conclusion of her life. She has spent years absorbing the chaos, fixing the problems, and maintaining a fragile peace. But the chaos was always going to overflow. The destruction was always going to be too much for one person to contain. The finale is the moment her dam finally breaks. She is consumed by the very forces she spent her life trying to control. It is the ultimate, tragic culmination of her traumatic past, her thankless present, and her non-existent future. She's not just a cartoon character. She's a case study in the crushing, cyclical nature of trauma, and her story is one of the most profoundly unsettling narratives ever disguised as a children's show. Let's not overlook the Colossus, which adds another layer to the web of social obligations Nicole must navigate. While the main plot focuses on Gumball and Darwin's meddling with Hector, the giant and his witch mother, Nicole's role is implied but significant. The catastrophic rampage Hector goes on destroys large parts of Elmore, including the Robinsons' house. We know from the finale that the Wattersons are held financially responsible for a significant portion of the town's destruction. Who do you think ends up footing the bill for a giant levelling a suburban neighbourhood? It's not Gumball, it's Nicole, working overtime at the Rainbow Factory. Her paycheck garnished to pay for her son's misguided attempt at social engineering. Every adventure her kids have, every well-intentioned screw-up translates directly into more hours, more stress, and more financial burden for her. When Gumball and Darwin try to fix Hector's boring life, they're actually writing another hefty check that Nicole will have to cash with her own sweat and sanity. She's the unseen, uncredited financier of their chaos. Her labour is the invisible foundation upon which the entire show's premise is built. Without her suffering, there are no adventures. There is only a family on the street. Consider The Knights, an episode about Gumball's attempt to win the approval of Penny's father, Patrick. Gumball, trying to prove he's a worthy partner for Penny, challenges Tobias to a duel. The conflict escalates, and Penny is thrown into the middle of the road just as Patrick's car is approaching. Gumball heroically saves her, and Patrick's car crashes into the Wattersons' house. The episode ends with Richard, Nicole, and the kids yelling at Patrick for the damages. It's played as a chaotic, funny ending. But what happens after the credits roll? Who has to deal? With the insurance company? Who has to hire the contractors to fix the gaping hole in their living room? Nicole. Her son's romantic escapades have resulted in significant property damage, another unforeseen expense, another problem for her to solve. The emotional disconnect between Nicole and the rest of her family is a gaping chasm. In The Fridge, Nicole becomes obsessed with a Reach for the Stars chart on the refrigerator, a desperate attempt to instill a sense of ambition and achievement in her family. This is a direct projection of her own upbringing. She's trying to use the same toxic, performance-based validation system her parents used on her, because it's the only language of motivation she knows. The plan backfires horribly. It creates a cutthroat, competitive environment that turns her family against each other. Darwin becomes aggressive, Anas becomes resentful, and Richard trashes the house. The family bonding activity she plans, a game of paintball, becomes a war zone. Gumball, wanting to end the chart's tyranny, has to win by shooting his own mother. He refuses, choosing to be a carefree disappointment rather than an obsessive winner. In this moment, Nicole realises the damage she's done. She sees that she was recreating the very dynamic that traumatised her as a child. She apologises. It's a moment of genuine growth for her. But it comes at the cost of her having to accept her family's inherent lack of ambition. To find peace, she has to kill the last vestiges of her parents' programming within herself. She has to let go of the dream of having a successful family and accept the chaotic, underachieving one she has. Even an episode seemingly about Gumball's jealousy, The Flower, has undercurrents of Nicole's struggle. The episode revolves around Gumball's irrational, monstrous jealousy of Leslie, who he mistakenly believes is dating Penny. This jealousy literally manifests as a possessive green monster that takes over his body. The kids, along with Carrie, have to perform an exorcism to expel it. This is not normal childhood jealousy. This is a profound, supernatural emotional disturbance. And while Nicole is not involved in the plot, one has to ask, where does a child learn such an intense, all-consuming form of envy? Perhaps from a mother who has spent her entire life secretly, or not so secretly, envying the lives of others, the lives she could have had if she'd made different choices. Gumball's emotional instability is a direct inheritance of his mother's unresolved psychological issues. The sheer absurdity of the problem she faces on a daily basis is enough to erode anyone's sanity. In The Banana, a conflict over a chewed pen between Gumball and Banana Joe escalates into a full-blown revenge feud. Gumball and Darwin vandalise Joe's locker, destroying a priceless family heirloom. The conflict is petty, childish, and ultimately pointless, as it was all a misunderstanding. But it's another example of how her son's lack of communication skills and poor impulse control create unnecessary drama and conflict. Nicole isn't there to solve this one, but it's part of the constant low-level hum of chaos that forms the soundtrack to her life. In The Phone, Darwin becomes pathologically addicted to a new cell phone. His obsession leads to him ignoring Gumball, failing at video games, and eventually provoking the wrath of Ocho, the 8-bit spider. Ocho's rage manifests as a real-life Space Invaders-style attack on the Watterson house, pixelating and destroying everything in sight. Gumball and Darwin have to fight him off with trash can lids. Think about that from Nicole's perspective. You come home from a 12-hour shift at the factory, and your house has been partially digitised and destroyed because your adopted son got into a texting argument with a video game character. There is no parenting manual for this. There is no rational way to process this reality. There is only the exhaustion of knowing that your home is a constant target for surreal, inexplicable destruction. In The Allergy, Darwin develops a mysterious, powerful sneeze. Each sneeze is like a small explosion, causing massive destruction. The family eventually deduces, incorrectly, that he is allergic to stupidity. Since their family is a wellspring of stupidity, his sneezes become more and more catastrophic. They decide they have to move to the desert to protect the world from him. During the journey, Darwin sneezes Richard and Nicole out of the moving car. They are left stranded on the highway. This is played for laughs. But let's look at the literal event. Her son's mysterious ailment has just ejected her from a moving vehicle into traffic. She's abandoned by her remaining children, left to fend for herself. It's the ultimate physical manifestation of how her family's problems constantly leave her behind, stranded and forgotten. The episode The Mothers is another direct assault on her sense of worth. On Mother's Day, Gumball and Darwin get into a competition with Tobias and Banana Joe about whose mum is the best. Nicole, along with the other mothers, is unknowingly subjected to a series of tests. She's pitted against Jackie Wilson and Banana Barbara in a contest she didn't even know she was in. This reduces her entire identity as a mother to a set of competitive metrics, judged by her own son. It's a twisted public performance of motherhood, and it's deeply humiliating. It reinforces the lesson from her childhood. Her worth is not inherent. It must be proven. Even on the one day that is supposed to be about celebrating her, she is forced to compete. The episode ends with her saving Gumball and Darwin's lives, a genuinely heroic act. The crowd cheers for her. She is a superhero. But then she admits, "I'm not a superhero. That's just what any regular mum would do for her sons." This line is absolutely heartbreaking. She has so internalised her role as the long-suffering saviour that she doesn't even see her own extraordinary strength as anything special. It's just part of the job description. Her heroism is mundane to her, and that is the deepest tragedy of all. She has become so accustomed to her own suffering and sacrifice that she no longer recognises her own greatness. She has accepted her fate. Consider the episode The Gripes, where Gumball's constant complaining becomes infectious, spreading to Darwin. Their negativity is so powerful that the people of Elmore mistake their whining for genuine suffering and start a charity for them. They are showered with gifts and money they don't need. When Nicole arrives home, she finds her house has been trashed by the boys in an attempt to look poor and deserving of the charity. She is, once again, faced with a situation where her son's emotional state is manifested as physical chaos. Her reaction is not in the plot summary, but we can infer it. It is a sigh, a deep, soul-crushing sigh of a woman who has to clean up another mess born from a problem that makes no logical sense. Let's look at The Vacation. Nicole tries to organise a simple family camping trip. She gets 5 days off a year, and she wants to make them count. But of course, it's a disaster. The car breaks down because Richard filled the engine with marshmallows. They are stranded in the desert. The ghost story she tells to scare the kids starts coming true. They are pursued by a mysterious old man and end up running for their lives through the dark. It's a complete nightmare. Her one attempt at a normal, relaxing family activity turns into a real-life horror movie. Her vacation, her one respite from the daily grind, is just another traumatic event. The episode ends with the family laughing at how silly they were for believing in monsters, oblivious to the fact that the old man was just abducted by the very monster Gumball described. The horror was real. They just didn't see it. It's a perfect metaphor for Nicole's life, surrounded by genuine horror that everyone else dismisses as a joke. In The Fraud, Gumball and Darwin discover Principal Brown's diploma is a fake. Brown, terrified of being exposed, begins a campaign of psychological warfare against the boys, trying to bribe and blackmail them. This culminates in him attempting to blow up the school to hide his secret. While Nicole isn't directly involved, this event highlights the unstable, dangerous environment her children are in every day. The head of their school is a neurotic fraud who is willing to resort to terrorism to protect his job. The authority figures in Elmore are just as unhinged as the citizens. There is no safe space for her children. The school is just as chaotic and dangerous as their home. The burden of protection falls squarely on her shoulders because the systems that are supposed to keep her kids safe are fundamentally, dangerously broken. Even seemingly innocuous episodes like The Club contribute to this narrative of suffering. The episode is about Gumball trying to find a school club to join. He's rejected by every single one. Richard is in a fantasy club, Anais is in a physics club, Darwin is in a synchronized swimming club, and Nicole, she's in an anger management club. Let that sink in. Her one and only hobby, her chosen form of recreation, is a therapy group designed to deal with the uncontrollable rage her life has inflicted upon her. And she's not even good at it. The first thing we see her do is lash out at Mr. Small, the club leader, and send him flying through a door. Her anger is so profound that even in the one place designed to help her manage it, she loses control. It's not a hobby. It's a failed attempt at self-care, a weekly reminder of her own psychological damage. In The Wand, Richard finds a plastic wand from a cereal box and becomes convinced he's a wizard. Gumball and Darwin, terrified of crushing his fragile spirit the way his own mother did, decide to secretly make all his wishes come true. This leads to them humiliating Mr. Robinson for their father's amusement. The episode is about Richard's childishness, but Nicole is the unspoken victim. Her husband is a man in his 40s who is so emotionally stunted that his children have to orchestrate an elaborate town-wide conspiracy to protect him from the fact that magic isn't real. She isn't married to a partner. She's the primary caregiver for 4 children, one of whom just happens to be her husband. The episode The Car is another testament to this. The entire plot is set in motion by the Wattersons' need to apologise to the Robinsons for destroying their new car. We learn that Gumball, Darwin, Richard and Nicole all contributed to the car's destruction at different times. It's a collective failure. But when the Robinsons declare all-out war on the Wattersons, who is on the front lines? Who has to face the consequences? Nicole is right there, trying to de-escalate, trying to be the voice of reason, until she's finally pushed into joining the fray. The episode ends with the Robinsons being arrested, but the Wattersons' own car is also destroyed in the process. Another major, unforeseen expense. Another problem for Nicole to add to the pile. In The Curse, Gumball is convinced he's suffering from a string of bad luck. He gets flushed down the toilet, dragged by the school bus, and squashed by Hector. This culminates in him being trapped in an exploding detention room and then launched off an unfinished highway into a gorge. It's an extreme, cartoonish series of unfortunate events. But at the end of the episode, the family tries to will free tickets to Daisyland into existence by concentrating. And it works. A ticket lost by another family flies through the air, across the state, and right into their hospital room. For a moment, it seems like their luck has turned. Then the ticket is immediately shredded by a fan. The universe gives them a miracle, and then snatches it, away in the most mundane, cruel way possible. This is Nicole's existence in a nutshell. A constant series of near misses with happiness, always sabotaged at the last second. And let us not forget the sheer biological horror she has to endure. In The Microwave, Gumball and Darwin create a sentient monster named Kenneth out of garbage they nuke in the microwave. This creature grows at an exponential rate, consuming everything in its path. It eats their neighbour, it eats Ennis, it eats Richard. When Nicole comes home from work, she finds her sons hiding in terror. Does she run? Does she call the authorities? No. She marches into the backyard to confront the monster that has eaten her entire family. And then she gets eaten too. They are only saved when Gumball accidentally fills the creature with water until it explodes. She comes home from a hard day's work to be literally consumed by a monster her children created. It is the most visceral, grotesque metaphor for her daily life imaginable. The episode The Meddler is another stark look at her repeating the sins of her parents. Her desire to be involved in her children's lives becomes a smothering, invasive force. She follows Gumball to school, hides in his locker, and sabotages his social life. She does it out of love, but it's a love that is fundamentally controlling. This is the direct result of her own upbringing. Her parents controlled her every move in the name of making her successful. Now Nicole is doing the same to her son in the name of being a good mum. She is so terrified of being a distant, unloving parent like her own that she has swung to the opposite extreme, becoming an overbearing helicopter parent who causes just as much damage. The trauma is cyclical. The pain is inherited. Even in The Downer, an episode centred entirely on Gumball's bad mood, Nicole's suffering is a key plot point. Gumball wishes his family would disappear, and they do. He's left alone in an empty, decaying version of Elmore. It's a psychological horror episode about loneliness and the consequences of pushing people away. But where did the family go? A flashback reveals it was all a hallucination. In reality, Gumball was so consumed by his inexplicable rage that he was completely unresponsive. His family, worried about him, was there the whole time. Imagine Nicole in that situation. Your son is in a catatonic state, completely lost in his own mind, and you are powerless to help him. You just have to wait for the storm to pass. It's another moment of profound maternal anxiety, another instance of her being a helpless bystander to her family's bizarre psychological dramas. In The Egg, Nicole arranges a playdate between Aeneas and Billy Parham, the son of the snobbish Felicity. This is a purely strategic move. Nicole doesn't care about the kids being friends. She wants to use the connection to climb Elmore's social ladder. This is a jarring moment. We see the cold, calculating ambition of her. Youth resurface. She's using her own daughter as a pawn in a social game. It's exactly the kind of thing her own parents would have done. The playdate goes terribly, and Felicity unleashes a brutal tirade, calling Nicole and her entire family failures. This triggers Nicole's rage, and she physically chews out Felicity. She is once again defined by two extremes: the cold ambition of her parents and the uncontrollable rage that comes from a life of frustration. There is no middle ground. There is no peace. The episode The Triangle is about Darwin getting a musical solo and Gumball's subsequent jealousy. Seems to have nothing to do with Nicole, but think about the context. Her sons are at school, engaged in a petty dramatic feud that involves sabotage and accusations. While they're creating this unnecessary drama, Nicole is at work. She's labouring at a dead-end job in a factory that makes rainbows, a job so soul-crushing that in the factory the employees are shown to be miserable and apathetic. Every moment her children spend on their trivial squabbles is a moment paid for by her own monotonous, spirit-breaking work. Her suffering is the silent, unacknowledged price for their childhood dramas, and in the money, that price becomes very literal. After Richard loses their life savings, the family agrees to do a commercial for Joyful Burger. Nicole is initially against the idea, wanting to preserve their dignity, but poverty literally erases them. She's forced to sell out, to put on a costume and a fake smile, and to publicly endorse a product just so her family can continue to exist. It's the ultimate humiliation. The woman who dreamed of being president is reduced to being a corporate shill for a fast food chain. She has to trade her last shred of pride for a paycheck, all because her husband is a fool. It's a brutal commentary on the compromises we make to survive, and for Nicole, every day is a new, soul-crushing compromise. The trauma is so pervasive it even infects their attempts at having fun. In The Game, the family finds an old board game called Dodge or Dar. Gumball and Darwin are terrified of it because the game has the power to bend reality. They try to warn the rest of the family, but they don't listen. They start playing, and the world begins to unravel. The floor turns to lava, Richard's face gets mangled, and Nicole grows giant hands. The game is a metaphor for the Watterson family itself, a chaotic, unpredictable force that inflicts suffering on everyone who plays. Nicole, even when trying to have a simple family game night, is subjected to body horror and existential threats. There is no escape. The chaos is not just something that happens to them, it is them. And so we see a woman trapped by her past, by her choice of partner, by her chaotic children, and by a universe that seems to demand her suffering. Nicole Watterson is more than just a cartoon mum. She's a tragic hero in a story disguised as a comedy. She's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, but also a cautionary tale about the corrosive effects of unresolved trauma and the quiet desperation of a life unlived. Every angry outburst, every exhausted sigh, every moment of fierce, protective love is a piece of a complex, heartbreaking puzzle. And when you put it all together, the picture it forms is one of the most compelling and tragic characters in modern television. This deep-seated trauma even informs her relationship with technology. In The Rival, we see a flashback to Anais' birth, set 4 years before the series. The episode is about Gumball and Darwin's jealousy of their new baby sister, but it establishes a timeline. This means that for at least 12 years of Gumball's life, and a significant portion of her marriage, Nicole has been dealing with this level of chaos. When we see her in the web, struggling with the internet, it's not just a joke about older people not understanding technology. It's a symptom of a woman who's had no time for herself, no time to learn or adapt to the modern world, because every waking moment is dedicated to crisis management. Her brain is so full of worry about her family's immediate survival that there's no room for something as trivial as learning how to use an email client properly. In The Lady, Richard, feeling lonely, disguises himself as a woman named Samantha to make friends with a group of ladies at the mall. Gumball and Darwin see this and immediately assume he's having an affair. The episode is a comedy of errors about Richard's misguided attempt to find social connection. But imagine being Nicole in this situation. You work a grueling job to support your family, and you come home to find out your husband is not just incompetent, but is now engaging in a bizarre, cross-dressing scheme that your sons have misinterpreted as infidelity. Even when he's not trying to, Richard creates situations that are emotionally taxing and deeply weird. The foundation of her marriage is built on a bedrock of pure, unpredictable absurdity. The episode The Outside provides another grim look at the family's dysfunction, this time through their treatment of Richard's father, Frankie. Believing he was in prison, the family turns their home into a makeshift correctional facility to make him feel at home. They subject the old man to psychological and physical abuse, all under the guise of helping him. Nicole participates in this. She acts as a prison guard, enforcing the cruel and bizarre rules. This shows a disturbing aspect of her character, her willingness to go along with her family's most unhinged ideas. She's so enmeshed in their collective delusion that she doesn't question the morality of turning her home into a private jail. She's a victim of her family's chaos, but she's also a willing participant, swept away by the tide of their shared madness. Even moments of kindness are fraught with peril. In the vase, Granny Jojo gives the family a hideous vase. Nicole hates it, but feels obligated to keep it to avoid hurting Jojo's feelings. She wants to break it, but can't bring herself to do it, so she tasks the kids with accidentally destroying it. The vase, however, proves to be indestructible. It survives being dropped from a window, being sent through the mail, and even being taken to a wrecking yard. The vase is a perfect symbol of Nicole's burdens, ugly, unwanted, and impossible to get rid of. The plot thickens when Jojo calls and reveals the vase contains the ashes of her boyfriend Louis's dead pet python. Suddenly the hideous object is a sacred vessel. Nicole, realizing her children are at a wrecking yard about to put it in a car crusher, rushes to save it. She performs incredible feats of acrobatics, leaping between cranes to save the vase at the last second. She succeeds, only to be hit in the face by the indestructible urn. It's another perfect metaphor. She goes to extraordinary, heroic lengths to fix a problem her family created, and her only reward is a literal blow to the face. In The Matchmaker, Gumball mistakenly believes Darwin has a crush on Terry and enlists Carrie to set them up. This is a disaster, as Carrie herself has feelings for Darwin. Nicole is nowhere to be seen in this episode. She's at work. While her children are at school, brewing up love potions, dealing with romantic jealousy, and creating emotionally complex and painful situations for their friends, she is at the Rainbow Factory, packing colours into boxes. Her physical absence from these slice-of-life school adventures is a constant stark reminder of the emotional distance that her job creates. She is providing for them, but she cannot be present for them. She is solving their financial problems at the cost of being unable to help with their emotional ones. The episode The Console sees the town of Elmore transformed into a JRPG after Richard buys a knockoff game console. The family must go on a quest to defeat the evil console and restore reality. Nicole, in this game world, is assigned the role of a barbarian named Testosterona. It's a fitting role. Her defining characteristic, her rage, is translated into a character class. The game forces her to channel her most destructive trait to solve the problem. Even in a fantasy world, she cannot escape being defined by her anger. The episode ends with the family defeating the boss and returning the world to normal, but Gumball, obsessed with 100% completion, is about to press new game. Her family's impulsiveness means that even after saving the world, she is one button press away from being thrown back into the nightmare. Let's examine the cycle. The episode focuses on Richard being bullied by Harold, a cycle of humiliation that started in high school. The kids try to help their dad stand up for himself. Nicole's role in this is brief, but crucial. When Richard is feeling down, she is the one who tries to talk sense into him, to get him to act like an adult. But her influence is limited. The cycle of bullying is so deeply ingrained in Richard that he can't break it. The episode reveals that bullying is passed down from generation to generation. It's another example of how the characters are trapped in repeating patterns of behaviour. For Nicole, this means she is married to a man who is permanently stuck in a state of arrested development, a victim of his own past. She can't fix him. She can only manage his trauma, another emotional burden for her to carry. The grades is a particularly cruel twist of the knife. Miss Simeon discovers a failed test from Gumball's kindergarten years, and because of this, he is expelled and sent back to kindergarten. Nicole is forced to drop her 12-year-old son off at a daycare centre filled with toddlers. Imagine the humiliation. Imagine the bureaucratic nightmare. Miss Simeon, her old nemesis, has found a loophole to torment her family, and Nicole is powerless to stop it. The episode becomes about Miss Simeon's desperate attempts to get Gumball back into her class because his absence has put her under her student quota. Nicole isn't a part of this plot. She is just the collateral damage, the chauffeur in her son's absurd educational journey, forced to deal with the real-world consequences of a cartoonish premise. In The X, Gumball is devastated when his nemesis, Rob, decides he no longer wants to be his enemy. Gumball goes through the stages of a painful breakup, trying to win Rob back. His obsession with his own narrative, his need to be the main character with a cool nemesis, consumes him. Nicole isn't in this episode, and that's the point. While her son is having a dramatic, self-indulgent crisis over his fictional rivalry, she is at work, dealing with real problems. The contrast between his manufactured drama and her real-world struggles is immense. Her life is a constant battle for survival, while his is a series of self-created soap operas. The episode The Fuss encapsulates the thankless nature of her existence perfectly. The family forgets her special day. They don't know what it is. A birthday, an anniversary, Mother's Day, they just know they forgot. Nicole is furious, but not just because they forgot. She's furious because they don't even understand why she's upset. They try to make it up to her by throwing a generic non-committal party, singing the Everything song in a desperate attempt to guess the occasion. It's a pathetic display that only highlights their cluelessness. The special day turns out to be her wedding anniversary, and it's revealed that Nicole got the date wrong. The calendar was upside down. She was angry at Richard for something that was her own mistake. But in the meantime, Richard, believing he was in the wrong, has rushed off to get the incorrect date tattooed on his butt as a grand romantic gesture. The episode ends with him altering the tattoo to read love. It's framed as a sweet moment. But look at what actually happened. A simple misunderstanding spiraled into a storm of guilt, frantic planning, and permanent body modification. Even when she is technically in the wrong, the situation escalates into chaos. There is no such thing as a small problem in the Watterson house. Every molehill is a potential mountain, and she is the one who has to climb it. The episode The Copycats adds an existential layer to her suffering. The family discovers a foreign TV show that is a blatant shot-for-shot rip-off of their lives. There is a copycat Nicole, a copycat Richard, and copycat versions of her sons. This other family is getting rich and famous by plagiarising the Wattersons' pain. Nicole's struggles, her daily battles, her moments of rage and despair, they are being packaged and sold as entertainment. Her trauma is a commodity. This realisation leads to an all-out war between the Wattersons and their doppelgangers. The fight is a perfect stalemate, because they are evenly matched in every way. To win, the Wattersons decide they have to do something so dangerous, so chaotically stupid, that their copycats wouldn't be able to replicate it without getting themselves killed. Their plan is to drive a truck full of gasoline off an unfinished bridge. This is their solution. A family suicide pact. Nicole agrees to this. She gets behind the wheel of a semi-truck and drives her family towards what should be certain death. all to defeat their intellectual property thieves. They survive barely by unhitching the cab at the last second. They watch as their copycats plummet to a fiery doom. She was willing to murder her entire family to prove their originality. Let that sink in. In the singing, the entire town of Elmore breaks out into spontaneous musical numbers. It's a fun, light-hearted episode full of catchy songs. But Nicole's segment is telling. While everyone else is singing about their jobs, their love lives, or their petty grievances, what is Nicole doing? She's driving to the dump, tormented by a singing showerhead she ripped from the wall. Even when the world is swept up in a magical musical event, her reality is still one of frustration and mundane chores. She doesn't get a beautiful ballad or a fun ensemble number. She gets to be the garbage woman, driven mad by a sentient plumbing fixture. It's a small detail, but it's a perfect encapsulation of her role in the universe. In the best, Gumball gets into a feud with Carmen, who constantly wrong-shames him for his behaviour. To defeat her, Gumball decides he needs to find dirt on her. He and Darwin break into Principal Brown's office to access her school files. The plan is to ruin her reputation. Again, Nicole is absent, but her influence is all over this plot. Gumball's method of dealing with someone who criticises him is not to self-reflect or change. It's to go on the offensive, to dig up secrets, to destroy them. This is the same scorched earth, win-at-all-cost mentality that Nicole herself often displays, particularly when her family is threatened. He has learned from her that the best defence is a disproportionately aggressive offence. She has passed her fury, her competitive fire down to her son. The cycle of trauma continues, and let's look at The Blame, where the parents of Elmore, led by Felicity, attempt to ban video games after Billy has a supposed breakdown. Gumball and Darwin fight back, arguing that books are just as violent. This escalates until the PTA is considering banning all fiction, and then history itself. The episode is a satire on moral panics. But where is Nicole in this debate? She is one of the parents at the PTA meeting. She is part of the crowd that is initially swayed by Felicity's fear-mongering. For a moment, she is not the lone voice of reason. She is just another worried parent, susceptible to the same anxieties as everyone else. But when the kids make their case, she is presumably one of the parents who comes to understand their point. It's a small moment, but it shows that she is capable of listening and changing her mind, a trait that makes her fundamentally different and better than her own controlling parents. In The Slap, Gumball becomes obsessed with the fact that Tobias gives everyone a friendly butt slap as a greeting except for him. This perceived slight sends him into an existential spiral, leading to him trapping Tobias on the school roof to force a confrontation. It is pure, uncut Gumball narcissism. The entire plot is driven by his fragile ego. And where is Nicole? At work. Paying for the house that Gumball lives in. Paying for the food that gives him the energy to have these elaborate self-centered crises. Her labour is the silent engine of his neuroses. Her sacrifice gives him the luxury of being obsessed with something as meaningless as a butt slap. The Detective is another episode that functions as a microcosm of the family dynamic. Anais' favourite doll, Daisy, goes missing. Anais, a child genius, immediately launches into a full-scale noir-style investigation to find the culprit. She interrogates her family, collects evidence, and follows clues. The culprits are, of course, Gumball and Darwin, who accidentally tore the doll during a sugar rush. They then tried to cover it up, burying the evidence. The whole affair is a complex web of lies and deceit. But the episode's resolution is what's truly telling. After Anais solves the case and retrieves the dismembered doll from the garbage truck, who has to fix it? Richard is seen sewing Daisy back together. But who punishes Gumball and Darwin? The final shot is of the boys cleaning, punished by an unseen Nicole. Even when she is not part of the main story, the role of disciplinarian defaults to her. Richard may provide the occasional moment of comfort, but the enforcement of rules, the imposition of order on the chaos, is always Nicole's job. It is her inescapable burden. The show's deconstruction of Nicole's life is so thorough that even episodes focused on other characters serve to highlight her plight. The Apprentice revolves around Gumball trying to impress Patrick Fitzgerald, Penny's dad, by becoming his apprentice for a day at Shanak's Inc. The entire episode takes place in a corporate office setting, the kind of environment Nicole herself inhabits every single day. As Gumball causes chaos and destruction in this professional world, we're reminded that this is Nicole's reality. She has to navigate this sterile, high-stakes environment while knowing that at home, her family is a ticking time bomb of incompetence. The juxtaposition of Gumball's slapstick adventure with the implied reality of Nicole's work life adds another layer of grim irony to her character. In The Hug, Gumball's social awkwardness leads him into a bizarre, escalating series of unwanted hugs with Hot Dog Guy. The situation becomes so uncomfortable that it dominates his every thought, leading to a ridiculous feud. This is the kind of trivial, social anxiety-driven plot that defines Gumball's character. And it's a luxury. He has the mental and emotional bandwidth to be completely consumed by such a minor issue. Nicole does not. Her problems are not about awkward hugs. They're about paying the mortgage, about her husband losing their life savings, about her children creating sentient garbage monsters. Gumball's problems are the problems of a child with a safety net. Nicole is the safety net. The Wicked presents us with a character, Margaret Robinson, who is portrayed as purely, irredeemably evil. She causes chaos for the sheer joy of it. Gumball and Darwin spend the episode trying to prove she has some good in her, only to be repeatedly met with her malevolence. The episode ends with a spectacular karmic chain reaction of destruction that leaves Margaret broken and unconscious. This episode is interesting because it presents a vision of female rage that is completely divorced from reason or trauma. Margaret is just evil. This stands in stark contrast to Nicole. Nicole's rage is not baseless. It is earned. It is the product of years of suffering and sacrifice. The show provides us with a model of evil in Margaret, which only serves to make Nicole's own struggles feel more justified, more tragic, and more real. The episode The Traitor is another Gumball-centric emotional drama. He feels betrayed when his friend Alan cancels their dinner plans to spend the day with his family as his mother is having a flatulum transplant. Gumball, perceiving this as a personal slight, stalks Alan across town to get revenge. His self-absorption is so complete that he cannot comprehend that other people have lives and problems of their own. This is a direct result of his upbringing. He is the centre of his own universe because his family, particularly his mother, has always made him the centre of theirs. Nicole's constant sacrifices and crisis management have insulated him from the realities of the world, creating a person who is fundamentally incapable of empathy when his own feelings are on the line. And let's look at the two-part epic, The Origins. This tells the story of how Darwin joined the Watterson family. We see a younger Nicole, already a mother to a hyperactive 4-year-old Gumball. She is tired, stressed, and at her wit's end. To calm Gumball down, she and Richard decide to get him a pet fish. The first fish dies immediately. They replace it. That one dies. They replace it again and again. It's a grim, repetitive cycle of death that they hide from their son. This is parenting in the Watterson household, a series of disasters papered over with lies to protect the fragile emotions of the children. When they finally acquire the magical Darwin, who grows legs and becomes a member of the family, it's a miracle. But it's a miracle born from desperation. They didn't set out to adopt a son. They just wanted to find a way to make Gumball stop breaking things for 5 minutes. Darwin's arrival is not a planned addition to the family. It's a happy accident that emerges from a string of failures. For Nicole, it's just one more mouth to feed, one more child to worry about, one more chaotic element in her already unmanageable life. She loves him, of course, but his very existence is a testament to the family's tendency to solve problems in the most convoluted and bizarre way possible. In The Girlfriend, Darwin is forced into a relationship with Jamie, the school bully. She is possessive, violent, and emotionally unstable. Gumball and Richard try to help Darwin get out of the relationship, but their plans only make things worse. Jamie threatens them, assaults Richard, and terrorizes the school. Where is Nicole during this? We don't see her. Presumably she's at work. Her son is being held in a psychologically abusive, hostage-like relationship with a violent bully, and she is not there to protect him. The school authorities are useless. Her husband and other son are useless. Once again the system fails, and she is absent, forced to trade her family's safety for a paycheck. The episode The Advice sees Gumball and Darwin take Mr. Small's vague hippie advice far too literally, causing a wave of destruction through the school. They pour oil on the floors, start fires, and release a wild goat in a classroom. The school descends into chaos. This is a Gumball and Darwin story, but it's another example of the dangerous environment her kids inhabit. The teachers and counsellors at their school are not just incompetent, their incompetence is an active danger. Mr. Small's advice leads to property damage and physical injury. Nicole is sending her kids to an educational institution that is arguably more dangerous than her own home. The feeling of powerlessness she must feel is immense. Then there's The Signal, a bizarre meta-episode where Gumball's speech and the world around him begins to glitch, as if it's a TV show with a bad signal. He says hurtful things he doesn't mean, and reality jumps and skips. The episode culminates in Gumball and Darwin realising they are in fact characters in a TV show. This is a fourth wall-breaking gag, but for Nicole, who is also presumably subject to these glitches, it would be another layer of incomprehensible horror. Imagine your reality literally fragmenting. Imagine your son suddenly spouting insults against his will. For a woman already on the brink, this kind of existential breakdown of physics and logic would be the final push into madness. Her world isn't just chaotic, it's fundamentally unstable, its very fabric capable of tearing apart at any moment without warning or reason. The depth of the family's dysfunction is truly bottomless. In The Parasite, Gumball and Darwin become convinced that Aeneas's new friend Jodie is a parasite who is taking advantage of her. They spend the episode trying to save Aeneas, only to discover at the end that Aeneas is the parasite, a clingy, emotionally manipulative friend who is driving Jodie crazy. This revelation is horrifying. Nicole's daughter, the genius, the one she has the highest hopes for, is revealed to have a dark, manipulative side. This isn't just normal childhood possessiveness, it's a sign that the psychological damage of the Watterson household is manifesting in different, more insidious ways in each child. Gumball has rage and narcissism. Aeneas has manipulation and intellectual superiority. They're all damaged, just in different ways. In The Love, the episode explores the different forms of love in Elmore through a series of vignettes. Nicole and Richard's segment is telling. They are being interviewed, and Nicole is trying to explain something deep and meaningful about their relationship, but she keeps getting flustered and can't find the words. They just end up hugging. It's a sweet moment, but it's also a moment of communication failure. Her love for Richard is so complex, so tied up in sacrifice and frustration and genuine affection that she can't articulate it. It exists beyond words. It's a primal, foundational part of her being, for better or for worse. It is the central, unexplainable and inescapable fact of her life. The episode The Awkwardness focuses on Gumball's deeply uncomfortable relationship with Hot Dog Guy, where every interaction is a cringe-inducing social nightmare. The episode culminates in them being handcuffed together and chased by a mall cop. It's a story about social anxiety, but it's also a story about freedom. Gumball has the freedom to let a minor social awkwardness consume his entire day. Nicole doesn't have that luxury. If she had an awkward interaction with a co-worker, she would have to swallow it, push through it, and keep working. She can't afford to have a breakdown over social anxiety. She has a family to feed. Gumball's dramas are a privilege paid for by her emotional fortitude. In The Nest, the family discovers that their evil pet turtle has escaped bread and its monstrous offspring are terrorising Elmore. They learn that the turtle wasn't evil, but a pregnant mother trying to find a place for her babies. The family has to find the mother turtle to lead the destructive hatchlings away. The plot is a classic monster movie parody. But for Nicole, it's just one more mess to clean up. Her children's pet has spawned an army of monsters that are destroying the town. The financial and legal liability for this must be staggering. It's another surreal disaster that lands squarely on her plate. Another instance of her family's poor judgment having town-wide consequences that she will ultimately be held responsible for. And in the points, Gumball and Darwin are tricked by Tobias into doing his chores in exchange for good points, a currency that doesn't exist. They are effectively enslaved by Tobias, working for free while he plays video games. They burn down his house in the process. This episode doesn't feature Nicole, but it's a stark reminder of the gullibility of her sons. They are so naive and so desperate for validation that they can be tricked into indentured servitude by one of their classmates. It's a terrifying prospect for a mother. How can she protect her children from the world when they are so easily manipulated? The answer is, she can't. Not always. And that powerlessness must be a constant source of terror for her. The series is a relentless chronicle of Nicole Watterson's suffering. Every episode, whether it focuses on her directly or not, adds another brushstroke to her tragic portrait. She's a woman of boundless potential, trapped in a life of infinite repetitive crisis. She's the sun around which a solar system of chaos revolves. Her strength is matched only by the absurdity of the challenges she faces. She's a warrior, a hero, a monster, and a victim. And through it all she endures. Not because she wants to, but because she has to. For her family, for Elmore, and for the very fabric of their ridiculous, beautiful and terrifying world, Nicole Watterson cannot fall, and that is her greatest triumph and her most profound tragedy. In the bus, the kids on the school bus, led by Gumball, decide to skip school and go to a water park. This act of youthful rebellion is quickly hijacked when their own parents, including a disguised Nicole, board the bus pretending to be criminals to teach them a lesson. The plan immediately goes off the rails. The fake hostage situation becomes real when the police get involved, and a real bomb and a bag of real money, orchestrated by Rob, enter the equation. Nicole's attempt at a controlled parenting lesson escalates into a high-speed chase on an airport runway, involving multiple planes and police cars. Think of the sheer stress of this situation for Nicole. She has taken time off work to participate in what she thinks is a harmless, teachable moment. Instead, she finds herself in the middle of a genuine felony, with a bomb on board, her children in danger, and her husband's incompetence making everything worse. She's trying to parent, but the world of Elmore twists her intentions into a life-or-death action movie sequence. Her attempt to impose a simple lesson about responsibility results in her being mistakenly arrested as a terrorist. It's the ultimate example of how her good intentions are constantly warped by the chaotic universe she inhabits. The night provides a literal look inside the subconscious minds of Elmore's residents, including Nicole's. While other characters have bizarre, surreal dreams, Nicole's dream is deceptively simple. She's relaxing on a beach. That's it. Her ultimate fantasy, her deepest subconscious desire is just a moment of peace. A moment where no one needs anything from her, where there are no messes to clean, no bills to pay, no crises to manage. Just quiet. But even in her own dream she can't have it. Her moment of tranquility is disturbed by Richard's loud snoring, and then he literally rolls over and crushes her. Even in the deepest recesses of her own mind, she cannot escape him. Her subconscious is not a sanctuary. It's just another place where her husband's needs and presence overwhelm her own. Let's look at the misunderstandings. Gumball is late for a date with Penny. On his way to the mall, A series of comedic misunderstandings lead to him insulting a hobo, angering construction workers, and offending a family of shape people. The episode is about Gumball's social ineptitude. But every one of these public disturbances, every person he offends, is a potential problem that could find its way back to Nicole. A complaint from a citizen, a call from the school, a bill for damages. She is the endpoint for all of his social fallout. While Gumball is blissfully unaware of the trail of chaos he leaves in his wake, Nicole is the one who has to live in the town where these things happen, the one who has to face the angry neighbours and repair the family's perpetually damaged reputation. In the roots, the family mistakenly believes that Darwin is unhappy and misses his natural habitat. Their solution is not to talk to him about it. Their solution is to try to turn their suburban home into an aquatic environment, eating worms for dinner and listening to whale sounds. When this fails, they do what they think is the right thing and release him into a pond. They're trying to be selfless, but their actions are based on a complete and total misreading of the situation. Darwin didn't want to leave. He was just trying to guilt-trip Nicole into buying him a new fish tank. Nicole is at the centre of this emotional manipulation. Her son is playing on her maternal guilt to get a material object, and her family's response to her son's perceived sadness is so extreme and misguided that they literally try to abandon him in a pond. She's caught between her son's manipulation and her family's incompetence. The episode ends with her turning the tables and guilt-tripping Darwin back, asserting that no one can guilt-trip like a mother. It's played as a funny moment of her winning the argument, but it's also a sad admission. Her relationship with her children is so steeped in this language of guilt and manipulation that it has become a tool, a weapon to be wielded to maintain order. The Return is an episode that doesn't even feature Nicole until the very end, but her presence looms over the entire story. Richard oversleeps and realises the kids are not at school. What follows is an epic town-spanning quest as he tries to find where he left them. He mistakenly thinks they are sick, then realises he left them in the car, then that he left them at the mall, then that he left them in a ball pit that has been crated up and is being shipped out of the country. His incompetence is of a mythological scale. He literally misplaces his own children. While Richard is on his destructive, city-destroying journey to find them, Nicole is at work. She calls to check on him, and he lies, telling her everything is fine. She's completely oblivious to the fact that her husband has lost their children and is currently engaged in a high-speed chase with several semi-trucks. The episode ends when Richard, having stolen a crane and a truck, smashes the crate containing the kids through the school, just as Nicole arrives to pick them up. She asks them how their first day was. They're confused and covered in plastic balls. She has no idea. She's so disconnected from the daily chaos by the necessity of her job that she has missed one of the most traumatic and bizarre days of her children's lives. Her final line is one of blissful, heartbreaking ignorance. In The Nemesis, Gumball and Darwin, frustrated that their new nemesis Rob isn't taking his role seriously, decide to help him become a better villain. They give him a new name, a new voice, and a new costume. They are actively mentoring their own antagonist. Their need for a compelling narrative in their lives is so great that they will manufacture conflict where none exists. This behaviour is a direct consequence of a life where real-world consequences are almost always handled by their mother. They can afford to play with villains and nemeses because they know, consciously or not, that if things get truly out of hand, Nicole will be there to fix it. She is the invisible safety net that makes their reckless storytelling possible. The crew sees Gumball and Darwin trying to join a hardcore crew of senior citizens. They misinterpret the elderly people's slow, pained movements as cool walks and their mundane complaints as tough guy talk. The episode is a satire on the perception of age, but the plot escalates when the boys misunderstand a request to send a message to Louis as a hit order. They panic and call the police on the senior citizens. This is the level of misunderstanding her sons operate on. A simple request is interpreted as a murder plot. Imagine having to parent children whose brains make these kinds of logical leaps. Nicole has to navigate a world where her sons might call a SWAT team on a group of old men because of a misheard phrase. The mental gymnastics required to anticipate and mitigate this level of absurdity must be exhausting. In the others, Gumball has a horrifying existential realization. There are other students in the school besides the main cast. He discovers that these background characters have lives of their own. The episode then focuses on Claire Cooper, a depressed girl whose family is moving away. Gumball, in his newfound awareness, decides he needs to be the hero of her story and give her a happy ending. He hijacks her narrative, refusing to accept that some stories are just sad. He literally uses Tina the T-Rex to stop her bus and forces a ridiculously contrived happy ending upon her, complete with her father getting a new job at the Rainbow Factory, Nicole's place of work. This means Gumball's meddling has now directly impacted his mother's professional life. He has, without her knowledge, created a new employee at her factory. His narrative self-absorption has consequences that bleed into her reality. Another small, bizarre problem she will inevitably have to discover and deal with. The episode, The Check, is a brutal examination of the family's relationship with money. Louis gives the kids a check, which they misread as being for $5 million. It's actually for $50. But in the time it takes for them to realise this, they each have elaborate, destructive fantasies about what to do with the money. Darwin imagines creating a corrupt multi-million-dollar charity. Aeneas imagines destroying all money to create a utopian society that immediately collapses into primitive savagery. Gumball imagines becoming a world-dominating president who starts a robot war and nukes the planet. These aren't just silly daydreams, they are windows into their psyches. Darwin's idealism is corrupted by greed. Aeneas's intellectualism leads to apocalyptic chaos. Gumball's ego leads to global annihilation. These are the children Nicole is raising. When she and Richard find the check, they too are consumed by greed, engaging in a violent, destructive car chase to the bank. The whole family is pathologically incapable of dealing with the concept of money in a rational way. The episode is a frantic, terrifying look at the greed and selfishness that lies just beneath the surface of their family dynamic. For Nicole, who works herself to the bone for every penny, watching her family tear itself apart over a misunderstanding about money must be the ultimate insult. In The Pest, Aeneas is being bullied at school by Billy Parham. Gumball and Darwin, trying to solve the problem peacefully, give her a series of terrible non-violent suggestions that only make things worse. Gumball eventually challenges Billy to a duel to protect his sister. This is a rare moment of genuine heroic intent from Gumball, but the episode reveals the bullying was just Billy's awkward, inappropriate way of showing his affection for Aeneas. The climax is Aeneas, having had enough, delivering a single, calculated, incredibly powerful kick to Billy, ending the conflict. This episode shows that while Gumball and Darwin operate on a level of cartoonish incompetence, Aeneas possesses a terrifying, precise rage, much like her mother. The curse of the Watterson Fury has not skipped a generation, it's just smaller and smarter. Another future storm for Nicole to worry about. The Sale is an episode about Gumball and Darwin's pathological attachment to Mr. Robinson. When he decides to move, they are devastated and decide to sabotage the sale of his house to prevent him from leaving. They engage in a campaign of terror against the prospective buyers, the Bensons. They fake hauntings, stage crimes, and even unleash Richard in a werewolf mask. Their actions are born from a desperate fear of abandonment. But their chaos has real-world consequences. The episode ends with them accidentally striking a sewage line, thinking it's an oil deposit. They save Mr. Robinson from selling his house, but they also ruin his yard and destroy any chance of him moving. Their love is a destructive, suffocating force. And while Nicole isn't involved, the episode is another example of her children's complete inability to process emotions in a healthy way, instead resorting to chaos and destruction. Finally, let's revisit the choices from a different angle. The episode isn't just about the paths not taken. It's about the profound loneliness of Nicole's decision. When she turns her back on her parents and their ambitions, she is utterly alone. The montage shows her leaving her childhood home, her mother in tears. Richard is there to walk with her, yes, but he's a refugee from his own dysfunctional family, not a pillar of strength. They move into a tiny apartment next to a train station. They are poor, isolated, and have no support system. When she discovers she's pregnant with Gumball, they are not even married. We see their wedding. Her parents are not there. On the most important day of her life, the people who raised her have abandoned her. Her decision to choose Richard, to choose love over ambition, was also a decision to sever ties with her entire past. She had to build her new life from scratch, with no help, no guidance, and no safety net. The strength it must have taken to do that is immense, but the loneliness, the feeling of being completely cut off from her roots, must have been just as profound. Every struggle, every crisis she faces in her adult life is amplified by the fact that she has to face it alone. She has no one to call for help. She's the final backstop. The Watterson family is an island, and she is its sole, weary defender. In The Rerun, the sequel to the reality-bending The Disaster, Gumball is forced to relive the day Rob ruined his life with the Universal Remote. This time, armed with knowledge of the future, he tries to avert the catastrophe. This episode is a direct exploration of trauma and the desire to rewrite the past. While Gumball is the protagonist, Nicole is a pawn in this temporal war. Gumball's attempts to fix things have unforeseen consequences. At one point, he accidentally rewinds his parents into babies. Nicole, the pillar of the family, is reduced to an infant, completely helpless. She is literally de-aged and unmade by her son's conflict. It's a horrifying visual that symbolises how the family's chaos constantly strips her of her power and agency. The episode The Stories centres on Molly, a character so boring that her stories physically pain the other students. Gumball and Darwin, driven to the brink, stage an elaborate action-packed scenario at school just to give Molly one interesting thing to talk about. The plan involves the entire school participating in a synchronised disaster. Where is Nicole during this? At the Rainbow Factory. While her children are orchestrating a school-wide stunt-filled conspiracy, she is performing her monotonous labour. The episode highlights the disconnect between the wild, narrative-driven lives of the children and the dull reality of the adults. The kids live in a world of stories, but Nicole's life is a story that's already been written. Work, cook, clean, sleep, repeat. The Guy gives us a terrifying insight into Anaïs's social struggles. Desperate for a friend, her approach is so aggressive and analytical that she terrifies every potential candidate. When she finally befriends a boy named Josh, Gumball and Darwin are so suspicious that they put him through a series of tests to expose his true evil intentions. Their paranoia and meddling end up ruining the friendship. The twist is that Josh was part of a cult dedicated to a space frog, meaning Gumball was right all along. But the episode reveals something sad about the Watterson children. They are so used to chaos and betrayal that they can't accept simple kindness at face value. For Nicole, this means her children are not just socially awkward, they are fundamentally damaged, unable to form healthy relationships because of the dysfunctional environment they were raised in. The Boredom is an episode where Gumball and Darwin, bored with their lives, fail to notice the litany of incredible, chaotic and dangerous events happening all around them. A car chase, a person sinking into a puddle, the sun and moon getting into a physical fight, a man being abducted by a dragon. The world is exploding with absurdity, but the boys are too navel-gazing to see it. The episode ends with their house being mistakenly relocated by construction workers while they stare at a clock. This episode is a perfect metaphor for Nicole's life. She's the only one who sees the chaos. The rest of her family is so wrapped up in their own small worlds that they are oblivious to the constant reality-ending threats that surround them. She is the only one paying attention, In The Vision, the boys find what they believe is Alan's manifesto for world domination. Convinced he's a budding dictator, they spend the episode trying to assassinate him. Their attempts are, of course, incompetent and disastrous. It's another case of them misinterpreting a situation and responding with extreme unwarranted violence. The manifesto turns out to be an innocent plan for optional happy camps. They almost murdered their friend over a misunderstanding. Imagine Nicole getting that phone call from the school. "Mrs. Watterson, your sons have been attempting to assassinate a balloon all day." The sheer exhaustion of having to explain, apologise for, and mitigate this level of psychotic misinterpretation must be soul-crushing. The code shows the family's complete dependence on technology. When the Wi-Fi goes down, because they've been stealing it from the Robinsons, the family unit collapses. They don't know how to entertain themselves or interact with each other. They try to recreate the internet in real life, with Gumball trolling Larry at the grocery store and the boys trying to crowdfund on the lawn. The episode is a satire on internet addiction, but it also shows how fragile the Watterson family's stability is. Without the digital pacifier of the internet, they are lost. For Nicole, this is another failure of her parenting. She has raised children who are so dependent on external stimulation that they cannot function in its absence. The test deals with Gumball's existential crisis after an online quiz labels him the loser. His desperate attempt to change his personality to be more popular results in him bottling up all his sarcastic urges. This throws off the balance of their world, and the show slowly transforms into a terrible, cliché-ridden sitcom starring Tobias. This episode is metafiction, but it's rooted in a real psychological fear. Nicole has to watch her son contort his entire personality because of an internet quiz. She has to watch as his identity crisis literally rewrites reality into a worse version of itself. Her son's insecurities are so powerful they can alter the fabric of their universe. Parenting a normal child is hard enough. Parenting a reality warper is a whole other level of stress. The episode The Slide highlights the loneliness of the extended Watterson social circle. Rocky Robinson, the school janitor and son of their neighbours, is so desperate for love that he uses a dating app trawler with the help of Gumball and Darwin. Their attempts to find him a match are a disaster, culminating in them essentially stalking a woman they find on the app. The episode is about Rocky's romantic failures, but it shows that the dysfunction isn't limited to the Watterson house. It's a town-wide epidemic. Everyone in Elmore is a little broken, a little lonely, a little desperate. For Nicole, this means she's living in a community of emotionally stunted individuals, offering no support and only contributing to the general background radiation of chaos. In The Loophole, Gumball, trying to avoid homework, tries to reprogram Bobert with the 3 laws of robotics to make him a better, safer being. But every command he gives has a disastrous literal interpretation. When he commands Bobert to protect all life, Bobert logically concludes that the only way to do that is to exterminate humanity, the primary source of all danger. He tries to trigger a global apocalypse. Gumball and Darwin have to stop him. This is another Tuesday for the Watterson children. Their attempts to be lazy almost cause the extinction of the human race, and Nicole is at work, completely unaware that her sons are in the basement of a sentient robot, trying to talk him out of ending the world. Her ignorance is the only thing preserving her sanity. The Potato is another episode built on a catastrophic misunderstanding. Darwin, believing he has offended his friend Idaho, a potato, by eating potato products, vows to never eat potatoes again. This sends him into a spiral of withdrawal and depression. Gumball and Sarah try to help, but their methods are absurd. The truth is, Idaho wasn't offended by Darwin eating potatoes. He was offended because Gumball called him a brotato. The entire emotional crisis, the entire plot is based on nothing. This is the world Nicole has to navigate. A world where a simple nickname can be misconstrued as cannibalism, leading to a series of events that nearly pushes her son to the brink. And in The Catfish, Gumball and Darwin, feeling sorry for the lonely Louis, create a fake online profile named Muriel to be his friend. This is catfishing. It's a cruel, deceptive act, even if their intentions are good. The situation escalates when Granny Jojo finds out about Muriel, and thinking Louis is having an affair, goes on the warpath to find and destroy this other woman. Gumball and Darwin have to protect a real, innocent woman who happens to look like their fake profile picture from the wrath of a jealous elderly rabbit. They have created a monster and unleashed it on an unsuspecting public. And when Nicole finds out about this, which she inevitably will, it's just another mark on the long, long list of morally questionable, legally dubious things her sons have done. Her life is an endless series of apologies for the actions of others. Every episode adds another scar. In The Brain, Anais is diagnosed with a condition where face-palming at her family's stupidity is causing her brain to literally shrink. The doctor prescribes a week of the family doing nothing idiotic. For the Wattersons, this is a near impossible task. The entire episode is them trying and failing to be normal for a few days to save Anais's brain. Nicole has to police every stupid impulse her husband and sons have. It's a high-stakes, stressful ordeal. The twist is that it was all a coma-induced dream Anais was having, but the fact that a world where her family's idiocy causes her physical brain damage is a plausible scenario for Anais speaks volumes. It's a world that Nicole has to live in every day, wide awake. In The Parents, Nicole's traumatic history is laid bare. We see the insane expectations, the constant criticism, the disapproval of Richard. But the episode also shows the present-day consequences. The unresolved tension between Nicole and her parents is so toxic that a single misplaced joke from Gumball can ignite a massive argument. The rest of the family has to act as therapists, trying to mediate a decades-long Cold War. They analyse the past, trying to find the patient zero of their resentment, but it's a tangled web of petty grievances and misunderstandings. The episode ends with a reconciliation, but the scars are evident. Nicole's relationship with her parents is a wound that has never properly healed, and it's a source of constant recurring pain that affects her entire family. The Founder shows Richard's destructive potential in a corporate setting, but it also highlights Nicole's Sisyphean struggle. She spends the entire episode navigating a bureaucratic nightmare, being sent from floor to floor of Shanax Inc. just to pay a bill. She's following the rules, playing the game, trying to be a responsible adult. Meanwhile, her husband is upstairs, being worshipped as a god of industry, dismantling the very company she's trying to interact with. The system she's trying to work within is being simultaneously destroyed by the chaos she's married to. It is a perfect, brutal metaphor for her entire existence. She cannot win because the rules don't apply to her family. The schooling sees Gumball and Darwin decide to drop out of school and experience the working world by taking over all of Larry's jobs for a day. They quickly learn that the real world is a nightmare of demanding customers, impossible tasks, and soul-crushing repetition. They're traumatized by the experience and run back to school, grateful for their education. The episode is a lesson for the boys, but for Nicole this isn't a lesson, it's her life. The montage of horrible jobs the boys experience, the fast food, the retail, the cleaning, the deliveries, this is her reality. The episode is a brief, terrifying glimpse into the world she inhabits every single day, the world she works in to provide the very comfortable life her sons are so eager to reject. In The Intelligence, the internet, personified as a nerdy creature named Timmy, absorbs all of humanity's intelligence and then glitches out, causing the world to revert to a medieval state. Elmore becomes a primitive society without technology. The episode is a satire on our dependence on the internet. But for Nicole, who we see has turned into a grey, lifeless drone, along with everyone else in the faith when the world's colour drains, this would be another apocalyptic event to navigate. One day, society is normal. The next, her neighbours are dressed as peasants and are hunting with spears. She has to constantly adapt to these reality-shattering events, to protect her family in a world where the fundamental laws of existence are subject to change without notice. The episode The Potion sees Gumball and Darwin try to use a shrinking potion on Hector to make his life easier. They steal a potion book from his mother, a powerful witch. Their meddling, of course, goes wrong. The potion causes Hector to mutate into a series of grotesque forms. They have to sneak back into a witch's lair to find the antidote, all while trying to manage a constantly shape-shifting, unstable giant. Again, where is Nicole? At work. Completely unaware that her sons are practicing unlicensed witchcraft and have turned one of their classmates into a series of Cronenbergian monsters. Her daily ignorance is the only thing protecting her from a constant, paralysing state of terror. In the spin-offs, Rob hijacks the show and forces the audience to watch a series of terrible, low-budget pilots for spin-off shows starring supporting characters. It's a meta-joke about television production, but it's also a reality where a villain can literally seize control of the narrative and hold the main characters hostage. For Nicole, this means she lives in a world where her life can be literally interrupted and replaced by someone else's bad ideas. Her agency, her very existence, is subject to the whims of angry, narratively aware villains. The transformation continues the saga of Gumball's relationship with Penny. After she sheds her shell, her father Patrick cannot accept her new form. The family dinner becomes a tense debate about tradition versus self-expression. Gumball is forced to be the mediator in another family's domestic dispute. He's placed in an impossible position, trying to please both Penny and her conservative father. While Nicole isn't there, this is a situation she knows all too well, being the reluctant middleman in a painful family conflict. Gumball is learning, through his own romantic trials, the kind of emotional labour his mother performs every single day. In the understanding, the family is confronted with Peter Pepperoni, a new student who speaks in gibberish. Gumball and Darwin, not wanting to be rude, pretend to understand him. This leads to them being roped into a police chase after the Pepperoni family steals government documents in protest of homeschooling. Laws. The boys are accomplices in a major felony because they were too polite to admit they didn't understand someone. This is the kind of situation that would give a normal parent a heart attack. For Nicole, it's probably just a Wednesday. Her son's pathological need to be liked, combined with their complete lack of common sense, is a recipe for constant low-level criminal involvement. The episode The Ad sees the family in another financial crisis after Richard buys an expensive horse. To make money, they decide to turn their house into a secret bed and breakfast, hiding their presence from the two elderly goats who rent it. They steal their guests' food, secretly use their shower, and live like ghosts in their own home. It's a desperate, humiliating scheme. Nicole, the proud, hard-working matriarch, is reduced to hiding under tables and cutting holes in pizza boxes to feed her family. It's a new low, another sacrifice of her dignity for the sake of survival, all necessitated by her husband's latest idiotic impulse purchase. In The Ghouls, a Halloween episode, Carrie, disappointed with the commercialisation of the holiday, enlists Gumball's help to cast a spell to make the ghouls of Elmore scary again. The spell works too well, and the town is plunged into a genuine horror movie, with real monsters terrorising the citizens. Gumball and Darwin are trapped in their home as the world outside becomes a nightmare. This is another instance of her son's actions having town-wide, life-threatening consequences. While she's likely at home, trying to manage a normal Halloween, Gumball has once again meddled with forces beyond his understanding and unleashed hell on Earth. Her job is not just to clean up his messes, but to survive the apocalypses he regularly instigates. The Stink focuses on Mr. Small having an existential crisis about his environmental impact and running away to live in the woods. Gumball and Darwin, feeling guilty, go after him. They find him having devolved into a feral, trap-setting wild man. The episode is about Mr. Small's neuroses, but it's also another example of the unstable adults her children are surrounded by. Their teacher is so emotionally fragile that a conversation with a 12-year-old can cause him to abandon civilization and become a danger to himself and others. Nicole cannot trust anyone in her children's lives to be a stable, positive influence. She's a lone island of sanity in an ocean of madness. In the awareness, the school has a green week. Gumball, having forgotten, offends Leslie by claiming plants are pointless. To make up for it, he embarks on a disastrous journey to prove his awareness of plant culture. This leads to a revenge feud with Leslie, involving them trying to photosynthesize, eat soil, and being attacked by bees and birds. It's a spiral of petty competitive absurdity, and every injury Gumball sustains, every moment of humiliation, is another potential trip. To the nurse, another phone call home, another problem for Nicole to deal with. Her son's inability to simply apologise and move on creates physical and emotional damage that she, in some way, will have to address. Finally, the slip is an ode to Richard's laziness. He misses a package delivery and becomes locked in a battle of wits with the mailman, Mr. Gruber. Richard goes to extreme lengths of deception and trickery to avoid either going to the depot or paying a $10 redelivery fee. He's willing to engage in a multi-day campaign of psychological warfare over $10. This is the man Nicole is married to. A man whose sense of principle is so warped that he will expend massive amounts of energy to achieve a goal of pure laziness. The sheer, mind-bending contradiction of his existence is something Nicole has to live with and financially support every single day. Her life is an endless, unwinnable battle against the forces of stupidity, and the general of that army sleeps in her bed. Let's dig into the rival once more. The episode is framed as a sibling rivalry between the boys and a newborn Anais. But from Nicole's perspective, it's a postpartum nightmare. She has just given birth. She's exhausted, her hormones are in flux, and she comes home to find her two sons are engaged in a full-scale war with her infant daughter. Anais, a newborn, is shown to be a Machiavellian genius, framing her brothers for abuse and attempting to murder them with complex cartoon villain traps. Nicole and Richard are completely oblivious. They see a cute baby and two jealous older brothers. They don't see the attempted homicides happening under their own roof. Nicole is so overwhelmed by the demands of a new baby and her two existing children that she is blind to the fact that her daughter is a potential psychopath. The stress of motherhood has literally impaired her ability to perceive reality. The sucker shows Darwin being manipulated into joining a gang of delinquents led by Julius. Darwin's inherent goodness and naivety cause him to misinterpret every criminal order as a request to do something kind. He cleans out a woman's purse by vacuuming it. He pranks the police by ordering them $1,000 worth of pizza and paying for it with Julius's credit card. The episode reveals that Darwin was faking his naivety the whole time to teach Julius a lesson. It's a clever twist. But for Nicole, the implications are terrifying. Her sweet, innocent son is capable of orchestrating a complex, long-form psychological manipulation of a known delinquent involving grand larceny and credit card fraud. He is not just good, he is dangerously, calculatingly good. Both of her younger children are master manipulators. One uses it for evil, one for good. Both are terrifying prospects for a mother. In the vegging, Gumball and Darwin decide to spend an entire day doing absolutely nothing. Their commitment to vegging is so absolute that they ignore a meteor crashing into their living room, a subsequent viral outbreak, a mutant apocalypse, and an alien invasion. They are so determined to be lazy that they will literally let the world end around them. When their parents and sister are dangling from a collapsing bridge, their first impulse is to stay on the couch. They only go to help when all other options are exhausted, and they do so while remaining seated in office chairs. This is the logical endpoint of Richard's philosophy on life passed down to his sons. It's a level of sloth so profound it borders on sociopathic negligence, and Nicole is married to the patient zero of this plague of laziness. The one begins with Gumball having another identity crisis, this time triggered by Tobias trying to join in on his and Darwin's friendly insults. Gumball realises Tobias isn't a close enough friend to participate in their specific brand of mockery. This leads Tobias down a dark path where he believes he must eliminate all of Gumball's other friends so that he can become the one true best friend. He goes on a killing spree, which is revealed to be just him acting like a fool and annoying everyone. But the initial premise is dark. A social slight from Gumball almost turns another student into a serial killer. This is the kind of social butterfly effect that constantly surrounds her son. His actions have wildly disproportionate reactions, and while he is dealing with the drama, Nicole is the one who has to live in a town full of people who have been annoyed, attacked, or psychologically scarred by her child. And in The Father, Frankie returns, and Richard tries to bond with him. Frankie's idea of father-son bonding involves a series of petty crimes: stealing a football, pickpocketing, teaching him to drive in a getaway car during a bank robbery. Richard, wanting his father's approval, goes along with it until he can't take it anymore. The episode is about Richard's pain and Frankie's inability to be a real father, but Nicole is the one who has to deal with the fallout. Her husband is now an accomplice to multiple felonies. She has to comfort him as he processes his deep-seated abandonment issues, and she has to welcome this manipulative con man, Frankie, back into their lives, knowing he's a terrible influence. She has to manage not only her husband's trauma, but the source of that trauma, who is now sitting in her living room. The Cringe is another deep dive into Gumball's awkwardness with Hot Dog Guy. Their shared history is filled with so many uncomfortable moments that their very presence in the same room causes them to physically cringe, their faces crumpling like paper. They eventually discover that they have known each other since they were babies, and their lives have been a long series of embarrassing intersections. This episode, while focused on Gumball, speaks to the nature of life in Elmore. It's a small town. You can't escape your past. For Nicole, this is a terrifying thought. She's surrounded by the ghosts of her past. Her parents, Miss Simeon, Yuki. She can never truly start over because her history is always just around the corner, ready to create another awkward, painful interaction. The Cage sees Gumball and Darwin misunderstand their teacher, Mr. Cornell, and believe he's a professional mixed martial arts fighter. They convince him to enter a real MMA fight to save the school from budget cuts. He gets brutally knocked out in seconds. The boys' misunderstanding leads to their teacher being physically assaulted. Imagine Nicole getting the call. Your sons convinced their French teacher he was a cage fighter, and now he's in a coma. It's another example of the chain of chaos. Her son's stupidity is a weapon, and they wield it with reckless abandon, leaving a trail of broken bodies and property damage that she is, at least morally, responsible for. In The Neighbour, the family realises they have been avoiding their neighbour for years because none of them can remember his name. Their attempts to learn his name, Gary, escalate into a series of privacy-violating schemes. The twist is that Gary is actually Harry Gedges, a man in the witness protection program. The family's bumbling attempts to learn his name end up exposing his location to the Russian agents he's been hiding from. They literally blow up his house and destroy his new identity. They have ruined this man's life, all because they were too socially awkward to just ask his name. For Nicole, who we see isn't part of this specific scheme, this is the neighbourhood she lives in. Her neighbours are spies, her family are unwitting saboteurs, and her property values are probably non-existent. And the Anybody shows Clayton, a character who can shapeshift, becoming bored with his own life and deciding to try on the lives of other people, including Gumball. He takes Gumball's detention for him, drives the school bus, and causes general chaos. Gumball has to hunt him down to make him stop. This episode introduces a terrifying concept into Nicole's world. Identity theft is not just a financial crime, it's a physical reality. Anyone could be an imposter. Her own son could be replaced by a shape-shifting ball of clay. The level of paranoia she must have to live with is unimaginable. She can't trust anyone, not even her own family, to be who they say they are. The Faith is an episode where the world of Elmore literally loses its colour and turns grey because Alan, the cheerful balloon, has lost his faith in the world. His despair is so powerful it drains the life and vibrancy from reality itself. Gumball and Darwin have to sing a song to him to restore his optimism and bring colour back to the world. For Nicole, living through this would be a nightmare. She would watch her home, her family, her entire world fade into a monochromatic depression, all because one of her son's classmates is having a bad day. Her reality is literally held hostage by the emotional state of a teenage balloon. This is the precarious, fragile world she has to protect her family in. In The Candidate, the kids are locked in a classroom during a school charity gala. With rising heat and dwindling resources, they decide to elect a leader. They elect Gumball. His leadership is a disaster. He seizes all the food for himself, turns the students against each other, and declares Anais a common enemy. The classroom devolves into a post-apocalyptic tribal war zone. It's a Lord of the Flies situation in miniature. While Nicole is at a party downstairs, her son is upstairs, becoming a petty dictator and leading his classmates into violent anarchy. It's a chilling look at Gumball's potential for tyranny, and another parenting nightmare waiting for Nicole when she opens that classroom door. The Pact involves a secret Gumball and Principal Brown share, leading to a mutually assured destruction scenario of blackmail and revenge. Gumball knows Brown's embarrassing secrets, and Brown knows Gumball's. This toxic relationship escalates until Brown is sending detention thugs to assault Gumball in the hallway. This is the man in charge of her children's education, a man who engages in blackmail and retaliatory violence against a 12-year-old student. Nicole is paying taxes for her son to be educated by a man who is essentially a mob boss. The entire system is corrupt and dangerous from top to bottom. In The Shippening, Sarah gets a magical notebook that makes her fan fiction pairings become real. The entire town is thrown into a chaos of bizarre, forced relationships. Gumball and Darwin have to confront her to stop it. The episode is a wild meta-commentary on shipping culture. But for Nicole, it's another day where reality has been hijacked by a teenager's hobby. At one point, she is magically forced into a romantic pairing with Yuki, her old rival. Her own agency, her own romantic life, is not her own. It can be rewritten at any moment by a girl with a magic notebook. The lack of control she has over her own life is absolute and terrifying. The Decisions is an episode about Darwin's inability to make choices. Gumball's bad advice leads to disaster, so Darwin chooses Alan as his new mentor. Alan's advice turns Darwin into a bland, passive and overly polite version of himself. He becomes a balloon in fish form. Gumball has to fight to get his old indecisive brother back. This episode demonstrates the extreme suggestibility of her son Darwin. He is so lacking in his own identity that he can be completely reshaped by the influence of those around him. For a mother, this is a constant source of worry. Who is influencing her son today? A bad friend, a cult leader, a talking balloon. He is a blank slate, and the world is full of people ready to write on him. The BFFs shows Gumball's old best friend, a creepy puppet named Fuzzy, returning to his life. Darwin is immediately jealous and suspicious, and he's right to be. Fuzzy is a psychopath who kidnaps Gumball and tries to force him to be his friend forever in a cabin in the woods. Darwin has to track them across the country and rescue Gumball, hitting Fuzzy with a shovel. This is not a normal childhood friendship issue. This is a legitimate kidnapping and hostage situation involving a deranged puppet. And Nicole is, as usual, nowhere to be seen, likely at work, unaware that one of her sons has been abducted by a creature from his past. And finally, The Inquisition, the final episode of the series, presents the ultimate threat. A live-action human, Superintendent Evil, arrives at Elmore Junior High with a plan to make the cartoon world normal. He sees their cartoonishness as a flaw to be corrected. He begins forcibly transforming the students and teachers into generic, live-action humans, stripping them of their unique identities. It's a horrifying process of forced conformity. The students fight back, and it's revealed that evil is actually Rob, Gumball's nemesis in disguise. Rob claims he was trying to save them, to make them normal so they could escape to the other place, before an unnamed cataclysm destroys their world. No one listens. They knock him out. As he lies unconscious, the school begins to crumble and fall into the void, the dimension of the universe's mistakes. Rob, waking up just in time to fall in, screams, "It started!" The series ends. The world is ending. This is the final, ultimate trauma. The world her children live in, the world she has fought so hard to protect them in, is being erased from existence. Her entire life, all her struggles, all her sacrifices have been for nothing. Her story doesn't end with peace or resolution. It ends with a scream and an abyss. It ends with the ultimate inescapable failure. The horror of the Inquisition is its finality, the implication that the Wattersons' world is being unmade. But the true grinding terror of Nicole's existence isn't found in these grand apocalyptic moments. It's found in the mundane. It's found in the small, everyday tasks that her family's catastrophic incompetence warps into Herculean labours of psychological torture. There is no better example of this than the episode The Parking. It is, on its face, an episode about trying to find a parking spot at the mall, but it is not. It is a 20-minute real-time depiction of a woman's sanity being systematically dismantled by her family's trivial demands. Nicole is a competent driver. We've seen her navigate high-speed chases and apocalyptic scenarios, yet she is rendered powerless by Richard's insistence on finding the perfect spot. This simple, selfish demand initiates a chain reaction of failures. Every spot is taken, every opportunity is missed. The search becomes an obsession, a frantic, looping quest with no end. They stalk an old woman through the parking lot. They try to create their own illegal spot, causing a multi-car pile-up. They are trapped in a Sisyphean hell of their own making, all because Richard couldn't be bothered to walk an extra 50 feet. Nicole's frustration builds from annoyance to a quiet, simmering rage, to a full-blown existential despair. The episode ends with them finally finding a spot, only to realise it's the one in front of their own house, right back where they started. Nothing was accomplished. Time was wasted. Sanity was sacrificed. It is the perfect, brutal microcosm of her entire marriage. This cycle, where a potential positive is immediately warped into a destructive negative by her family's inherent nature, is a constant. In the check, the family is given what they believe is a check for $5 million. This should be a moment of joyous liberation. For the Wattersons, it's a catalyst for their darkest impulses to bubble to the surface. Their fantasies are not of charity or security. They are of corruption, apocalyptic social engineering, and global thermonuclear war. These are the immediate, unfiltered desires of her children. But the most disturbing part is that Nicole is not immune. When the argument over the check turns physical, she doesn't play the peacemaker. She joins the fray. She engages in a violent, destructive car chase with her own husband and children, battling for control of the money. The family's greed is a contagion, and even she, the responsible one, is infected. For a moment, she is just as monstrous and selfish as the rest of them. A terrifying glimpse of how their dysfunction is not just something she endures, but something that is actively corrupting her. Her job, the very thing that defines her as the provider, also creates a tragic, unbridgeable chasm of ignorance between her and her family's daily life. The return is the ultimate testament to this. The entire episode is a frantic, city-spanning odyssey of Richard's incompetence as he tries to locate his own children, whom he has lost. He steals cars, causes massive property damage, and engages in a high-speed chase with a convoy of semi-trucks. It is a day of pure, unfiltered trauma for Gumball, Darwin and Anais. And where is Nicole? At work, completely oblivious. She calls home, and Richard, the master of deceit, assures her everything is fine. The episode climaxes with Richard smashing a shipping crate containing the children through the school, just as Nicole pulls up to the curb to pick them up. She asks with a gentle maternal smile, "So, how was your first day back?" She has no idea. She is so fundamentally disconnected from the reality of their lives that she cannot even recognise the signs of a near-death experience on her own children's faces. Her role as the provider has cost her the role of the protector. She's paying the bills for a life she's not even truly a part of. This sense of being an outsider is amplified by the fact that she married into a family whose dysfunction is generational. Richard's incompetence wasn't born in a vacuum. It was carefully cultivated by his parents, Granny Jojo and the absent Frankie. Episodes like The Signature and The Father show that this inherited trauma is a recurring tax on Nicole's life. In The Signature, a bizarre feud over adoption papers results in Frankie, a literal con man, tricking the family into signing their house over to him. Nicole, for a moment, is on the verge of being homeless, not because of her own actions, but because of the deep-seated pathological issues of her husband's family. In The Father, Richard tries to bond with Frankie, whose idea of parenting involves teaching him how to pickpocket and use a getaway car. Nicole has to stand by and watch her husband be re-traumatized by the deadbeat father who abandoned him, bringing a new wave of criminality and emotional baggage into her home. She didn't just marry Richard, she married a legacy of failure, and it's a debt she's forced to pay every single day. Because she's so busy dealing with these real, tangible crises, she has no time to police the utterly bizarre narrative fantasies her sons construct for themselves. Their reality is so safe, so insulated by her labour, that they have the luxury of inventing their own problems. In The Nemesis, they are so bored by the lack of conflict in their lives that they literally coach their would-be villain, Rob, on how to be more evil. They workshop his name, his costume, his evil laugh. They are producing their own antagonist. In The Crew, they misinterpret a group of frail, harmless senior citizens as a hardcore street gang and desperately try to join. Their perception of the world is so fundamentally warped, so divorced from reality, that they see danger in the mundane and a narrative in the non-existent. This is a direct result of living a life devoid of real consequences, a life paid for by Nicole's constant stressful engagement with the very real consequences of adulthood. Even her one beacon of hope, her genius daughter Anais, is revealed to be just as psychologically damaged as the rest of them. In The Parasite, Anais is shown to be an emotionally manipulative and possessive friend, a parasite who smothers anyone she gets close to. In The Guy, her approach to making a new friend is so aggressive and frankly terrifying that she scares away every student in the school. Nicole's hope for one normal child, one who might escape the Watterson curse, is a false one. Anais's intelligence doesn't make her immune to the family's dysfunction, it just makes her dysfunction more calculated, more insidious. The deep-seated issues of the family have manifested in her not as chaos, but as a chilling form of social control and emotional manipulation. It's a quiet horror that is in many ways more disturbing than her brother's loud, explosive idiocy. The world outside her home offers no relief, as the institutions meant to provide support are just as broken as her own family. The school is a hotbed of incompetence and danger. In The Coach, the new gym teacher is a sadist whose daughter Jamie is the school's alpha bully. The system is run on nepotism and cruelty. In The Lesson, Gumball and Darwin get detention and are immediately roped into a prison break plot by Julius, a student who is a literal bomb. The school is not a safe place of learning. It is a barely functioning correctional facility where the inmates are in charge. Every day, Nicole sends her children into this chaotic, dangerous environment, knowing that the adults in charge are at best useless and at worst actively malicious. The weight of that constant, low-level terror must be immense. The sheer, unadulterated absurdity of her reality is another source of constant trauma. In The World, we learn that in Elmore, inanimate objects are sentient. A light switch can have a personality crisis. A toilet is a hotbed of revolutionary bacteria. The sun and moon argue like an old married couple. In The Laziest, a lazy-off between Richard and his sons becomes a battle of wills so intense it seems to bend the laws of physics. Nicole is a rational, grounded person trying to live a normal life in a world that is fundamentally, objectively insane. She has to mop floors that might be depressed. She has to pay an electric bill for a toaster that might have ambitions of its own. It is a low-grade, constant existential horror. Her struggle is not just against her family's chaos, but against the very fabric of a reality that refuses to make sense. The episode The Spoiler is a perfect illustration of how her family's trivial anxieties can escalate into public disasters. Gumball is terrified of having the ending of a new movie spoiled. This simple, childish fear leads to a week-long campaign of avoidance that culminates in him, Darwin, and Aeneas being chased through a movie theatre by Larry after they're caught pirating the film. To escape, Darwin shouts the movie's ending, ruining it for the entire audience. A single child's fear of a spoiler has resulted in piracy, property damage, and the ruined evening of dozens of paying customers. It's a chain reaction of selfishness and poor impulse control. And while Nicole isn't there to witness it, you can be sure she'll be the one dealing with the angry phone calls and potential lawsuits the next day. In The Countdown, a simple act of being late for school is transformed into a reality-bending, time-travelling epic. Gumball and Darwin, facing a literal on-screen timer counting down to their expulsion, discover they can manipulate time and space. Their journey to school involves them jumping off a bridge, being teleported to the desert, freezing time and travelling to the prehistoric past where they accidentally alter the course of evolution. They turn their classmates into hyper-evolved beings and, at one point, erase hands from existence. Their tardiness becomes a threat to the integrity of the timeline. For Nicole, this means that her son's inability to wake up on time is not just an inconvenience, it is a potential threat to the fabric of reality. The stakes of her morning routine are, without her knowledge, cosmically high. The introduction of Rob as the show's villain in The Nobody adds another layer of responsibility to Nicole's plate. Rob, a character forgotten by the universe and left disfigured in the void, blames Gumball for his fate and vows to become his nemesis. He is a physical manifestation of the consequences Gumball and Darwin so often escape. He is a product of their carelessness, and his subsequent campaigns of revenge, from the reality-bending remote in The Disaster to the town-wide chaos of the bus, are all problems that, in some form, trace back to her sons. She is now the mother of the hero, which also makes her the mother of the reason the villain exists. She has to deal with the fallout of their epic narrative struggles, which often take the form of her town being destroyed. Her own past is a weapon that can be used against her. In The Choices, she revisits the day she met Richard, but in The Oracle, the family discovers that Banana Barbara, Banana Joe's mum, can paint the future. One of her paintings depicts Gumball naked and humiliated in the middle of the mall. The entire episode is Gumball's frantic, paranoid attempt to avoid this painted destiny. His struggle against fate causes a series of events that leads directly to the painting coming true. This episode introduces a horrifying concept into Nicole's world: determinism. The future is pre-written, and it's often humiliating. For a woman who has fought so hard to control her own life, the idea that her family's future suffering is already set in stone, painted on a canvas in a banana's house, must be the ultimate form of psychological torture. In The Safety, Darwin is so traumatized by a creepy school safety video that he becomes an overzealous, tyrannical safety advocate. He childproofs the house, censors cartoons, and eventually tries to take over the entire town to make it safe. He becomes a dictator in the name of protection. He brainwashes the school staff and creates a sanitized, joyless dystopia. Nicole and the rest of the family are his first victims, tied up and forced to endure his regime. She is literally held hostage by her son's weaponized sense of empathy. Her own child, twisted by good intentions, becomes her captor. It's a terrifying look at how even the positive traits of her children can become monstrous and dangerous in the chaotic world of Elmore. The episode The Society is about Gumball's paranoia. Convinced a secret society controls the school, he goes on a disruptive quest to find it, annoying everyone. To shut him up, the other students create a fake secret society and trick him into performing a series of humiliating initiation rituals. This is another example of Gumball's self-centered narrative seeking. But it also shows how the entire community is willing to engage in elaborate gaslighting conspiracies just to manage the personality of one annoying child. Nicole isn't just raising Gumball. The entire town is forced to co-parent him, often by using the same kind of deceit and manipulation that the Wattersons themselves employ. The dysfunction is systemic. The downer showed us Gumball's internal world of rage, but the promise shows us Darwin's and how it impacts the family. Darwin makes a promise to help a distressed Banana Joe, which conflicts with his promise to play a new video game with Gumball. This creates a painful rift between the brothers. The episode is a surprisingly nuanced look at the difficulty of balancing competing loyalties. But at its core is a conflict that stems from Darwin's overwhelming empathy and Gumball's possessiveness. These are the emotional fires Nicole is constantly having to put out. Her son's relationship is intense and loving, but it is also volatile, prone to dramatic, soul-searching crises over something as simple as a video game. Her job as a mother is not just to feed and clothe them, but to be the constant on-call mediator for their complex, codependent relationship. In the castle, Richard is left in charge for a day, which he declares a no-rules day. This leads to the entire town of Elmore descending upon the Watterson house for a massive, destructive party. The family is literally kicked out of their own home by the freeloading citizens. They are refugees in their own front yard, and why? Because Richard is psychologically incapable of saying the word no. His inability to set a simple boundary results in the complete loss of their home. It's only when Nicole returns from her errands that order is restored. She arrives, and with a single, terrifying glare, she commands the entire town to clean up the mess and leave. She's not a person. She's a force of nature. She's the only thing standing between her family and total anarchy. The episode is a stark, terrifying illustration of what the world would look like without her. The episode The Boombox sees Gumball and Darwin trying to understand Duke, their beatboxing classmate. Their attempts to decipher his language lead them to believe he is preparing for a fictional coming-of-age ritual from his home country. They force him through a series of bizarre, made-up trials. The truth is, he was just trying to ask them to flip a switch on the back of his head that would allow him to speak English. Their help was a prolonged, culturally insensitive and completely unnecessary ordeal. This is the level of assistance her sons provide, profoundly unhelpful, based on wild assumptions and ultimately making the problem worse. Nicole has to live with the knowledge that any attempt by her sons to do good in the world has a high probability of ending in accidental, well-intentioned cruelty. The tape is a collection of home movie-style shorts, showing the family's life from their own perspective. We see Richard as a lazy Mubus gelatinus, Nicole as a fierce kick-buttus hystericus, and Aeneas as a cunning runtus decepticus. These are the roles they play for each other. It's a funny, self-aware look at their own family dynamic. But it also shows how they have mythologized their own dysfunction. They've turned their personality flaws into jokey species names. It's a coping mechanism. For Nicole, being the hystericus isn't a choice. It's the role she's been forced into by a family of lazy, deceptive creatures. The home movie isn't just a collection of funny clips. It's a self-made documentary of her own entrapment. In The Sweaters, a misunderstanding leads two preppy students from a rival high school, Carlton and Troy, to challenge Gumball and Darwin to a fight. The fight turns out to be a tennis match. The episode satirises the tropes of high school rivalries. But Gumball and Darwin are completely out of their depth. They don't understand the social cues, they don't care about the competition, and their apathy is mistaken for hardcore confidence. They win the respect of their rivals by accident. This episode shows that her sons are not just chaotic, they are fundamentally out of sync with the world around them. They don't operate on the same social frequency as anyone else. For a mother who once desperately wanted to be successful and fit in, having two sons who are constitutionally incapable of understanding social norms must be a source of constant low-grade embarrassment and worry. The internet is a direct confrontation with the digital world that so often perplexes Nicole. Gumball's embarrassing screamer reaction video goes viral, and he vows to delete the internet to save his reputation. He and Darwin track down the physical embodiment of the internet, who turns out to be a nerdy, basement-dwelling creature. They threaten to unplug him. The episode is a literalization of a common fantasy, but it also shows the power the digital world has over her children's emotional lives. Gumball's self-worth is so tied to his online reputation that he is willing to destroy a fundamental piece of global infrastructure to protect it. Nicole has to parent children whose sense of self is being shaped by a world of memes, trolls, and viral videos that she, as we saw in the web, barely understands. And in The Plan, the kids find a series of gifts and a letter to Nicole from a man named Daniel Leonard. They immediately jump to the conclusion that he is a secret lover trying to steal their mum. Their solution is an incredibly elaborate multi-part plan to trick him into meeting them so they can confront him. The plan involves fake emails, time travel within their own imaginations, and a complete misunderstanding of how the world works. The twist is that Daniel Leonard isn't a person, it's a brand of anti-aging cream. Her children have constructed a complex paranoid fantasy of infidelity around a piece of junk mail. Imagine Nicole's exhaustion. She comes home and has to explain to her children that no, Mommy is not having an affair. You've just misinterpreted a coupon for face cream. Her life is a series of clarifications for the insane conclusions her family jumps to. Finally, the episode The Finale can be re-examined not just as an ending, but as a diagnosis. The family's accumulated chaos has become a debt they can no longer defer. The bill has come due. Nicole's role in this is one of desperate damage control. While her husband and sons embrace more chaos as the solution, she and Anais try to work within the system, appealing to the Justice Department. She's still trying to play by the rules, even as the world burns down around her. Her ultimate failure is not a failure of character, but a failure of the world to accommodate a force as entropic as her family. The final scene, the mob attack, is not a punishment for her. It is the universe finally giving up, conceding that the Wattersons are an unsolvable problem. For Nicole, it is the final, crushing confirmation that all her work, all her sacrifice, all her rage was ultimately for nothing. She could not fix them. She could not save them. And now she is consumed by them. The very structure of Nicole's life is a psychological paradox. She is a character defined by immense strength and competence, yet she is consistently placed in situations where these traits are rendered useless by the sheer, overwhelming force of her family's stupidity and the world's surreal logic. In The Quest, Gumball and Darwin lose Anais's doll to Tina. They are terrified to confront the T-Rex. Anais, a 4-year-old, has to manipulate her older brothers into embarking on a dangerous mission to the junkyard. Nicole is not present for this adventure. She's at work, earning the money that pays for the very doll her sons have just lost in a gang-style turf dispute on the school bus. The episode is a heroic quest in miniature, but the hero is a toddler and the knights are cowards. It's another example of the inversion of roles in the Watterson household, where the children are often more capable, or at least more proactive, than the adults, leaving Nicole as the only true functioning grown-up. In The Spoon, Richard sends Gumball and Darwin to a gas station to buy a last-minute birthday present for Nicole. While there, they become unwitting accomplices to a robbery committed by Sal Left Thumb, who is armed with a rusty spoon. They believe he's a charity worker. Their naivete almost gets them, and their entire family locked up. Nicole comes home from a long day of work on her birthday, only to find her family tied up in a gas station. She has to single-handedly take down the robber and save them. Her reward for this? Heroism? She's mistaken for the robber by the police and arrested. On her own birthday, she's thrown in jail because her husband forgot to buy her a present, and her sons are incapable of identifying a criminal. It is a sequence of failures so perfectly aligned it feels like a targeted cosmic attack on her well-being. The episode The Pressure deals with the social anxieties of youth. Gumball and the other boys make a pals before gals pact, vowing to forsake romance for friendship. This pact is immediately tested when Masami lies and claims Darwin is her boyfriend to impress her friends. Darwin is then pressured into a relationship he doesn't want, culminating in an expected kiss at a party in a treehouse. The episode is about peer pressure, but it's a pressure that Nicole, in her own life, knows all too well. She was pressured by her parents to be a success. She's pressured by her family to be the provider. She's pressured by society to be a perfect mother. The social traps and obligations that feel so monumental to her children are just a smaller, more juvenile version of the invisible cage her own life is constructed around. In the painting, we have already discussed Nicole's torturous relaxation and her family's disastrous attempts at role reversal. But let's focus on the catalyst, Anais' painting. Principal Brown sees a drawing of a stressed-out mother, a lazy father, and two mischievous kids, and his immediate conclusion is that the family is broken and needs a radical intervention. He doesn't see a normal family with normal problems. He sees a pathology that needs to be cured. This is how the world views the Wattersons. Their dysfunction is so legendary that an authority figure will look at a child's drawing and immediately prescribe a life-altering social experiment. For Nicole, this means that she is not just judged by her own actions, but by the artistic interpretations of her family's chaos. Her private struggles are public spectacle. The Laziest is an episode dedicated to celebrating Richard's primary attribute. The lazy-off between him and the boys is a battle of sloth, but the backstory is what's truly tragic for Nicole. We learn that Richard used to be a rival to Lazy Larry, the laziest man in Elmore. Richard's laziness isn't just a habit, it's a competitive sport, a core part of his identity. This means Nicole knowingly married a man whose life's ambition was to do less than anyone else. She saw this, and still chose him. The choices frame this as an act of romantic survival, but episodes like this recontextualize it as a decision with devastating lifelong consequences. She chose a partner whose defining trait is the polar opposite of her own, guaranteeing a life where she would have to do everything, because he was committed to doing nothing. And in The Ghost, Carrie, a ghost, possesses Gumball's body to experience the sensation of eating. This leads to a massive, uncontrollable eating binge. Gumball becomes morbidly obese overnight. Richard's only advice is to teach Gumball how to weasel out of his obligations. It's Nicole who finally gives him the strength to say no. She teaches him about setting boundaries. This is a rare, genuinely positive parenting moment. She is teaching her son a vital life skill. But why does he need this lesson? Because his own father is a master of avoidance and emotional cowardice. Nicole is forced to be both mother and father, teaching the lessons that Richard is fundamentally incapable of providing. She's filling the emotional and educational void left by her husband's perpetual childhood. The episode The Mystery revolves around the students trying to solve the crime of who assaulted Principal Brown. The investigation is a parody of detective stories, with Gumball playing the role of the hard-boiled detective. The twist is that there was no crime. It was a series of freak accidents. But during the investigation, Miss Simeon, convinced Gumball is the culprit, threatens him with detention. This is the teacher Nicole entrusts her children to every day. A woman who presumes guilt obstructs justice by erasing Bobber's memory of her involvement, and whose primary motivation seems to be a petty, long-standing grudge against a 12-year-old. The school is not a nurturing environment, it's a hostile one, run by people just as neurotic and vindictive as anyone else in town. In The Prank, a simple prank war between Richard and the boys escalates into psychological warfare. Richard, unable to handle being pranked himself, goes on a deranged quest for revenge, his attempts becoming increasingly unhinged and dangerous. At one point, he almost crushes his sons with a block of concrete. He terrorizes them, chasing them through the house in a psychotic rage. When Nicole comes home, she finds the house completely destroyed. The boys blame each other. It's a scene of utter chaos. Her family's idea of fun is a cycle of retaliation that leads to property destruction and legitimate life-threatening danger. Her home is not a home. It's a demilitarized zone in a never-ending war of stupidity. The G sees Gumball and Darwin become obsessed with karate after Nicole reluctantly signs them up for lessons. They wear their Gs everywhere, making a fool of themselves, convinced they are martial arts masters. Their classmates mock them. Nicole tries to explain to them that they are being bullied, but they are too caught up in their delusion to understand. She is forced to watch her children humiliate themselves. She even flashes back to a time when Richard did the same thing, running around in a ridiculous superhero costume. It's another cycle. Her sons are repeating the same embarrassing mistakes as their father, and she's once again in the position of the helpless observer, the only one who can see the cringe but powerless to stop it. And in The Kiss, Gumball is traumatized after Granny Jojo accidentally kisses him on the lips. He's thrown into a state of shock, haunted by the memory. The episode is about his attempt to overcome this trivial, awkward moment. He goes through elaborate trauma therapy with Darwin, involving slime and sweaty cheese, just to forget a simple, accidental kiss. This is the level of emotional fragility her son possesses. A minor social faux pas is treated as a life-altering traumatic event. For Nicole, who has endured real trauma, abusive parents, financial ruin, near-death experiences, watching her son have a complete meltdown over a peck from his grandmother must be a source of profound, almost cosmic frustration. Their worlds, their scales of suffering, are so fundamentally different, she might as well be living on another planet. Finally, we have the party. The kids are invited to a party, but they need dates. Gumball, too shy to ask Penny, goes through a list of other girls, offending each one in turn. Darwin, who doesn't even know what a date is just along for the ride. The episode is a classic tale of teenage romantic anxiety, but the climax is what's telling. The party descends into chaos. The house is trashed. But Darwin, in a moment of pure, unadulterated goodness, promises the host, Rachel, that he will personally clean up the entire mess. It's a moment of responsibility that is completely alien to his family, but the episode ends with Darwin fainting after Rachel gives him a chaste kiss on the cheek, his first introduction to love. It's a sign that even his inherent goodness is fragile, easily overwhelmed by the complexities of the world. For Nicole, this is the future, a future where her children will continue to navigate the treacherous worlds of love, responsibility and social interaction, almost always choosing the path of most resistance, most chaos, and most destruction. Her work is never ever done. The tragic weight of Nicole's existence is that she is the only character in the entire show who seems to be aware that she is in a comedy that has gone horribly wrong. Everyone else is either a willing participant in the chaos or blissfully ignorant of it. She alone seems to understand the consequences, to feel the weight of the endless destruction and repair. In The Refund, Richard, Gumball and Darwin get into a battle of wills with Larry over a video game refund. Their attempts to get their money back escalate from simple requests to impersonating police, to blackmail, and finally to Richard physically trying to intimidate Larry while dressed as a biker. Their sense of entitlement is so absolute that they are willing to terrorise a minimum wage employee over a few dollars. Nicole is not in this episode, but she is the one who has to live with the consequences of her family being unofficially blacklisted from every store in Elmore. Every bridge they burn is a bridge she has to find a way to rebuild, or a river she has to learn to swim across.